This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
It is 4 minutes after 10 and the pressure's on. Gary's in Bodmin. James, he writes, you're accompanying me on a 3-hour training run this morning. Please make it a great show today. Oh, I've got stage fright now, Gaz. Seriously, I've got the wobbles. Oh no, how am I going to be able to do this with you on your 3-hour training run? Everyone wants something from me. Richard's been, I love you, James, but as it's a Friday, could you lighten the mood and drop a music recommendation? Your previous ones for the Raytons and Wonder Horse were spectacular shouts, and I can't wait for the next one. God, as if I've got Gary, I've got Richard, there's so much pressure on me today. Honestly, it's not as easy as I make it look, you know, this business. Oof. What are we going to do? You can tell that I'm not mad keen on the first subject under discussion because I've just gone off on a very deliberate tangent. You can always tell, can't you? I always do that. I'm so transparent. I'm so see-through. I'm so simple. It's a conversation I want to have. It's a conversation that we should have, but it's a strangely dispiriting conversation because, well, we've had it before, would be one reason for that. And the second is, if you had a bingo card of things that I say a lot on the programme, it would change, wouldn't it, over the years? Where would two things can be true at the same time appear? How high up on the list? If we were to go in order of frequency, the things that are most frequently said, two things can be true at the same time. And in many ways, I think the reason why that's become a bit of a refrain for us is because it flies in the face of what phone-ins used to be about, didn't it? I mean, for example, on the John Torode story, it would once have been the case that a bunch of white men who were my age ring up to tell the white man who's my age presenting the programme why the N-word shouldn't be offensive because black people use it in rap songs and therefore they should be able to use it as well. It'd be a bit like the stop and search phone-ins that we used to have in 1962. No, well, all right, quite recently, where a bunch of white men ring in to tell a white man why it's perfectly reasonable for black men to be treated as if they're guilty until proven innocent, although that should not be extended to anybody else, obviously. And I think that the nuance we seek to introduce to stories has made most conversations more interesting. So Diane Abbott, I don't believe, is anti-Semitic. But I do believe that she had to be suspended from the Labour Party yesterday after withdrawing her apology and her withdrawal of comments that she made a couple of years ago. And shall I tell you what I think happened? I'm going to need a bit of policing today. I'm going to need a bit of tone policing. I've already pointed out that I'm poised to weigh in defence of a middle-aged white man who stands accused of using the N-word, or not defence, but expressing a point of sympathy, whether or not it's right that I should feel sorry for John Torode. But I'm not going to lie to you, at this point in time I do, and I'm across the detail. I think that's quite important. I also, this isn't a boast, this is just an attempt to understand how the media works. I said to colleagues yesterday, I bet he sang along to something. You read into that story and thought, what has actually happened? What is the word? The way the story is being written, there's only one word it can be. I would probably only one word it could be, or a P word or an N word. And it's probably the N word, and I would not be surprised because of the way that he's expressing complete befuddlement at what's happened to him, or indeed at the fact that he can't remember. I would not be surprised if he sang along to a rap track. And someone said, you can't do that. And he said, oh, sorry. Yeah, of course. That's all. So I said that yesterday. And lo and behold, front page of The Sun today tells precisely that story. So I'm conscious of the fact that what's the word I want? Is it an inherent bias? White privilege? White privilege, possibly? Here I am feeling a bit of sympathy for the middle-aged white bloke and just profound frustration at the middle-aged black lady. I don't know. And that's the point about two things can be true at the same time. That may be the correct position to have arrived at. And it has nothing to do with inherent biases or indeed with white privilege. I think Diane Abbott forgot what she wrote. So I think Diane Abbott, when asked if she stood by the comments that she made a couple of years ago, I think in her mind, and this I may be doing her a disservice here, because I'm going to cast some aspersions upon her mental acuity. I think she forgot that she essentially equated the Jewish experience to being ginger-haired. And I think that what she remembered was that she claimed being black, being visibly a member of a minority, an ethnic minority, creates a very different environment and a very different experience from signifiers that are not immediately obvious, if you like. For example, being Jewish or being a member of the traveller community. That was the point she made. Jewish people, Gypsy, Roma, traveller, face similar levels of prejudice to people with red hair was such a stupid observation that her apology and withdrawal became immediately inevitable. And I would say that the only thing you can say with certainty today is that she has lied. Because either she lied when she apologised and withdrew the comments, or she lied yesterday when she stood by them, or she forgot what she said the first time round and thought she was defending the, for me, perfectly reasonable observation that being a victim of skin-based racism is an experience that Jewish people and traveller people can't really have. That seems to me to be an observation which gets filed under obvious. So here we are. She has lost the whip again. She lost it 2 years ago, and she's lost it again today. I think I got handed my backside on a plate yesterday when I sought to defend Keir Starmer's suspension of 4 backbenchers who've led and been active in various rebellions. I didn't change my mind, but I recognised that I was on a bit of a hiding to nothing, particularly in the case of the York MP. I can't see the same thing happening today. I really can't. I can't see anybody defending it successfully the argument or the the claim that being Jewish is like being ginger, and therefore not something that should be taken as seriously as skin-based racism. How do you want to do this? Should we do a ding-dong, or do you want to tell me what you think happened? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. And the reason why this is dispiriting, the reason why I went off on one of my customary tangents at the top of the hour, is because I would really like Diane Abbott's legacy to be the one that I think her life and career deserves. Nobody has been more abused than Diane Abbott. Sadiq Khan probably comes a distant second, but when it comes to the levels of vicious abuse directed at politicians, Diane Abbott is in a class of her own. That's not an opinion, that is counting. And of course, it is largely racist in motivation. And if you don't think it is, then you'd have to tell me why, if you think it's down to competence or clownishness, why is Jacob Rees-Mogg not in constant receipt of vituperative and vicious hate communications that involve the police being called on a regular basis? I can't see how she now avoids this millstone being hung around her neck for the second time. And that's what I find dispiriting. She's the mother of the house, the first black female member of parliament, a visionary figure, a pioneer of diversity and race relations, a wonderful example to everybody really, but particularly to people who might have been growing up believing that they had no place in parliament or that politics was not a business or a world for them. And yet she does this. So we don't really do on a scale of 1 to 10 how bad is this. And I don't want to do that today because I'm under no illusions about how bad it is. It was such a stupid thing to do the first time round. Do you remember that she claimed she'd accidentally sent the wrong letter? That she'd sent a draft by accident to the Observer, and that was the reason she gave for such bilge ending up in print. And now, given the opportunity to simply reiterate her regret and her apology, she decided to do the polar opposite and doubled down on the original offence, the offence that she both acknowledged and excused by claiming that it was an accidental keystroke, that a draft was sent to the Observer newspaper rather than the letter that she originally wanted to send. That seems to be missing from a lot of the coverage. I can quote you the exact words that were used. She said she wanted to wholly and unreservedly withdraw my remarks and then blamed the errors on, and I quote, an initial draft being sent. This is why it's so frustrating for people that want Diane's legacy to be the one that she actually deserves, you can't overlook this. You can't write it off. You can't move past it. She literally said that she wholly and unreservedly withdrew her remarks, which were objectively stupid and quite possibly profoundly offensive, and chalked it up to an error, to an initial draft being sent instead of the final bit. So even people that want to defend her have to call her a liar. So if you want to defend her now, you have to say she was lying when she claimed that it was wholly unreservedly something she should apologise for, and a consequence of an initial draft being sent instead of the actual letter that she wanted to send to the Observer. So she's got herself and anybody sticking up for her into an almighty mess. It's so weird that this ghost, if you like, has been resurrected at a time when she was back in the party, back in Parliament. 10:14 is the time. So here you go. This is from Alex. If you listen to what she said yesterday, she fully explains what she means. Stop spinning it for your own interest. You see, these people, they are objectively ridiculous. She literally said that she wholly and unreservedly withdrew her original remarks and that they were a consequence of an error, of an initial draft being sent in error. But look at these people queuing up to defend her. If you're defending her for what she did yesterday, you're claiming that she lied 2 years ago. So she is either an idiot or a liar. There's no third path here. And it's appalling that she's ended up in this situation, but the only person to blame for her ending up in this situation is her. I think today, 0345 60 60 973, being the number that you need, just tell me what you think. We don't need to have a row. We can have a row if you want, but just tell me what you think. That is my quite carefully considered and reluctantly quite cross conclusion. You can't have it both ways. You can't claim that you stand by what was said while simultaneously having someone else remind you that you withdrew it wholeheartedly and unreservedly and claimed that it was all a terrible mistake. It's like a mad illustration of footballification going out of control. I like Diane Abbott, therefore I will defend her whatever she's done. Well, she's described her own behaviour as indefensible. I'm still defending her. Well, then you're defending the thing that she calls indefensible. I am defending the indefensible, and you are biased. But she said it was a mistake. So it's 16 minutes after 10. I didn't know where we were going to go with this. And now I do. I have laid out my thoughts, and I would like you to do the same. You don't actually have to use my introduction today as the trampoline from which you leap into this discussion. You can come at it with your own monologue. You can come at it with your own thoughts, your own thinking. It's a story of our times. And it's a horrible story in so many ways because Diane Abbott's legacy should be glorious. And a large part of the reason why it won't be is because of the racist idiots that have plagued her political career at every step and completely ignored and denigrated the people who hate her for being black, hate her for being a woman, and most of all, hate her for being in Parliament as a black woman. But you can't let that crowd out the fact that this is an almighty clangor. This is a disastrous intervention, and yet more evidence of the Labour Party's historic ability to snatch disgrace and defeat from the jaws of even landslide victories. What do you think? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. I don't think she's anti-Semitic. I think what she said was incredibly stupid and almost certainly offensive, although as a middle-aged white man, it's not me who would feel personal offence. And yet to attempt to defend her now is to accuse her of lying then. I can't do a phone-in on how anyone could be so stupid that they can't see what I'm now describing. Even by my standards, that would be condescending and unproductive. But seriously, how can anyone be so stupid as to not see what we've just laid out? If she withdrew unreservedly and wholeheartedly and explained that it had all been a terrible mistake, she can't now say that she sticks by it without making herself a liar and you a fool. 0345 6060 973.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It drives me nuts because it just gives... This is why I didn't want to talk about it, but accept that I have to, because it's just another opportunity to talk about the Labour Party in turmoil and entirely Here's what you do, right? If you have the pleasure of advising Diane Abbott on her media strategies, listen, you're doing an interview with Jim Nocte. He's going to ask you about that thing a couple of years ago. Here's what you say. You say, of course, I deeply regret the way that I chose to express myself. Or I explained at the time that we sent the wrong letter in, and I never would have sent that if I'd actually realised what we were doing. I jotted down some thoughts that were incoherent and obviously wrong. I stand by the argument that the experience of racism for people, when it is skin-based, the experience of racism is different from the experience of people whose otherness is not immediately obvious. For example, Jewish people or Irish people or members of the travelling community or Roma. But I absolutely regret the language that I used and the comparison of the Jewish or the Irish experience with being ginger-haired. That's how you do it, and it's not blooming difficult. But here we are again. Richard's in Upminster. Richard, what would you like to say?
Good morning, Mr. O'Brien.
Hello.
First of all, I did speak to your colleague, your producer, and I have to say, without a shadow of a doubt, you are the best orator on TV and radio.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Honestly, I hear your colleagues, and you are just that level above.
Wow. Now, one or two of them are okay.
Well, now, get on to the case of Miss Abbott.
Yes.
Now, for Diane Abbott, see Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes.
Okay. I think they are both amazing people as they do their utmost to fight for what's right in the world today, which there are very few of them, especially in politics at the upper echelon. Okay.
Okay.
But I think, to put it lightly, Miss Abbott has, scored a massive own goal here.
It's indefensible. It's so unnecessarily stupid. That's the thing that drives me nuts. I don't necessarily agree with your analysis of her and Corbyn, but I can join you in the observation that they fight for what they believe to be right. And this is just
They call controversy. Apologies to interrupt you.
That's all right. I do all the time.
They both caught controversy one way or another because it keeps the spotlight on them so they don't fade into oblivion.
I would disagree with you on that, actually.
Well, fair enough.
No, I really would. I don't think. I mean, you're not.
I respect highly when I listen to you.
It's mutual now. We should get a room.
I'll tell you what.
Hang on a minute. Don't interrupt me when I'm interrupting you. Honestly, I'm the finest orator in the country. How dare you speak when I'm speaking?
My humble apologies.
That's quite all right. Just this once. What I don't agree. Well, what I need to know whether you're suggesting or not that she's done this on purpose for attention.
Yes.
Oh, well, and then I'm going to disagree with you completely.
Well, you can disagree.
That's one of the shortest
right
bromances. That's one of the shortest bromances in history.
Okay, give me a reason why she's done that then. You explain to me. You educate me.
She forgot what she said. She thought...
No.
Yes.
These people at the top level, they never forget.
She once went out in shoes that didn't match. I mean, we're all good at concentrating on some things and not on others. In her head, she thought that the conversation was about... The difference...
Why I say that is I'm a wonderfully 54-year-old middle-aged white man with all the privileges that come with it, unfortunately.
Yes,
okay?
So am I.
Now,
well, 53.
many moons ago, when I was a young nipper working at McDonald's, okay, I worked with a chap who was as white as you and I.
Right.
However, this young chap was an Arab, was a Muslim. And one evening in our shift, and this is a straight-down-the-line story, a certain Mr. Tony Adams comes in, okay, drunk as...
Because he's obviously not here to he's not here to defend himself. You can't drop stories. I don't think you can, although... did we dump that? Did we? No, we didn't. So I am going to have to stop it there, although... no, we're not falling out about this or anything like that. I just can't... I can't run the risk of where you're going on that one with a named member of the... with a named public figure. 25 minutes after 10. What you were probably going to tell me was that people can obviously have their otherness unseen and until it is known. And that is precisely the point that Diane Abbott was making. And I agree with that bit. But the business about gingers and anti-Semitism and Irishness, it just is, well, it's so silly and so wrong that she was right to unreservedly and wholeheartedly apologise for it, and indeed to explain that it was all a terrible mistake. I honestly don't think there's any other way into this or out of it, except for the people whose scarves are tied, and Richard puts Diane Abbott very much in the Jeremy Corbyn camp, which he is correct to do, unless your scarf is tied so tightly around your neck that it's cut off the flow of blood to your brain. Mike's on Baker Street. Mike, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James. The first time I phoned into your programme.
Why? Why?
Well, because I haven't felt the need to.
What do you think I'm here for every morning? My own amusement?
Well, I hear so many other people engaging with you really positively.
All right, okay. Well, you're better late than never, Michael. Better late than never.
I just wanted to say that I'm a 67-year-old black dual heritage man, father Nigerian, mother Irish. I'm also gay.
Okay.
And back in the 70s, I was stopped all the time by the police, not because of my gayness, not because of my Irishness, but because I was a young black man, so I couldn't hide that. And I think what Diane Abbott has always tried to say, since that comment, which I really think was wrong, was just simply that. And I think this time she's actually acknowledging that Jewish people face racism. It's just very, very different. So if they choose to show their Jewishness, of course they could be victimised in the same way I was, but I don't have a choice. My colour is always going to be there.
But this is what I mean about two things being true at the same time. That part of her contribution to the discourse is just correct. I don't even think it's debatable. Of course, there is a difference between if you encounter somebody prejudiced, bigoted or racist, and you have a sign on your head describing your status, which is essentially what happens if as you draw distinctions between being gay and being black. I don't know you're gay when I see you, but I know that you're black. And that is true. But the way that she expressed it the first time round was, I mean, mind-bogglingly stupid.
I agree.
And she was asked whether she had any regrets about that episode, and she said no, which is mind-bogglingly stupid squad.
I agree. I think what she was trying to convey the first time is what I've just explained.
Yes, but she failed.
She's got a very large community of Jewish people up there in Stamford Hill who are very supportive of her as an MP. And as you say, she is a pioneer. And, and I wonder sometimes whether she would be facing the same criticism if she was a white middle-class...
She categorically wouldn't. Again, lots of different things can be true at the same time. It's not a case of being Team Diane or anti-Diane. It's a case of saying all of the things that you've just said, but the thing that I said as well, that she was absolutely stupid to say what she said, and is stupid again now to undo the apology.
No, but she did. Well, she hasn't retracted her apology, has she?
Well, she said she doesn't regret what happened.
Yeah, but I think what happened for her was the scenario that I've just given you, is that black people always will face a different kind of racism, to say redheads, Irish people or Jewish people, simply because you can't choose to hide your colour.
She said she had no regrets about the episode.
Yes. Because I think...
But she has to have regrets about it, because she wholeheartedly and unreservedly apologised. How can you have no regrets about something you wholeheartedly and unreservedly...
She hasn't retracted that apology. She hasn't retracted it.
Well, I think she has. I think she has in terms...
Oh, OK, well, that's where we differ. I think what she was trying to say very clumsily, amazingly clumsily... and badly back then was what I've just... The scenario I'm not
arguing with you about that. I completely agree. That's what she was trying to say. But it's no defence that you were trying to say something if you end up saying something completely different.
Well, no.
It's regrettable. And she doesn't regret it.
But given her track record, hopefully people would give her the benefit of the doubt that was a bad mistake, which she apologised for.
Well, no, I don't think... I would in many circumstances, but you can't say I don't regret it.
But hasn't she put it right, James, by explaining that she does see racism faced by Jewish people and black people?
Yes, but that's when we're back to... We're going round in circles. It's not an unpleasant experience, but it is nonetheless circular, because that's when we're back to saying two things can be true at the same time. And what you're denying is that she should not say that she doesn't regret what she did 2 years ago. She does not look back on the incident with regret. I mean, hand on heart, Mike, how can you not look back on an incident that... you unreservedly and wholeheartedly apologised for without regret, unless you are now not that sorry anymore.
Yeah.
There you go. I got you in the end. You knew that was good.
I don't think you did.
What? How dare you? Right, we'll go round again then.
No, we won't go round again.
Just to clarify...
I just think she made a very silly statement all those months and
it's worse than that. It's worse than silly to many Jewish people, because and I think people who remember the no dogs, no blacks, no Irish signs will be somewhat offended at being told that they might as well have been ginger. They'd have had the same levels of experience. Just for the record, you're not ginger, are you?
No, I'm a black.
No, I know, but you know, I know. And gay as well. I'm just looking at. It's extraordinary the sort of reasons for prejudice that you would have invited in the course of your life, but there is only one that's immediately visible when you step outside of your front door.
Yeah, and I think that's basically what she was trying to say in 2022.
And I do too, but she didn't, and that's why I'm right and you're wrong. It is a terrible faux pas for her to claim that she doesn't regret it at all. I'm being a bit... we're having fun, right? I'm not 100% convinced of my position. If you've got a way of explaining why it's wrong, then feel free to join in. Feel free to come down on Team Mike. But what you will have to do is somehow square a circle in which you can unreservedly and wholeheartedly apologise for something that happened by accident, and then 2 years later say that you don't regret any of it at all. I don't think you can do that. Not in a logically or intellectually consistent way. But hey, I could be wrong. 10:32 is the time. Dominic Ellis has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10:35 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I mean, it is a little bit surreal, isn't it? I mean, I think I was guilty of footballification a bit yesterday. But it doesn't mean I can't see it when other people are suffering from it. You can't defend the indefensible. If I do something and I apologise wholeheartedly and unreservedly for it and offer up an explanation that makes it look like a mistake, I claim it was a mistake. If I'd known that was going to happen, I never would have done it. And then 2 years later I say I don't regret it at all because of what I meant to say rather than what I actually did say. It's fundamentally absurd, I think. But hey-ho, I mean, let's be nice. We all do a bit of footballification sometimes, so perhaps the people doing it today should be greeted more in love than in anger. John's in Leeds. John, what do you think?
I think that you're overcomplicating the issue. I think that if anybody causes some sort of, I mean, you know, she said something that's potentially offensive and she said that she regrets it, and, you know, if it caused offence, that's right and that's proper, that's fair enough. But I think that she was apologising for any misinterpretation and that what she said was not taken as she meant.
So why did she say it was sent? Why did she say it was sent in error then?
I think we should be careful that we're not taking what she said out of context.
Why did she say it was sent in error?
Sorry, say that again?
Why did she say the original letter was sent in error?
Why do you think she said that?
Well, either she's telling the truth or she's not, but it makes a complete mockery of your claim that what she did was taken out of context. She literally wrote the words and then said, I shouldn't have sent them. So nothing's been taken out of context at all. That is, in fact, the dictionary definition of the opposite of being taken out of context. She's apologised for putting it into context.
Well, maybe she...
And you think I'm overcomplicating it?
It was going to be taken out of context.
No, it wasn't taken. It wasn't taken out of context. She literally wrote that people don't experience. Well, I'll tell you exactly what she wrote. Tomima Obalade claims that Irish, Jewish and traveller people all suffer from, quotes, racism, end quotes. They undoubtedly experience prejudice. This is similar to racism, and the two words are often used as if they are interchangeable. It is true that many types of white people with points of difference, such as redheads, can experience this prejudice.
And then she said, I just think that it's silly to try and claim that racism, which is about skin colour, is the same as other types of racism.
Yes, and we're back to where we were with the last. We're back to where we are with the last call. If she'd said that,
we're going round in circles.
No, we're not. We're not. You're banging your head against the brick wall, and I'm Morris dancing. If she had said what you think she meant to say, she wouldn't have got into trouble. But she got into trouble, so she wholeheartedly and unreservedly apologised. And now she says she doesn't regret it, which makes everything worse. It could have gone away. It had gone away. sent in error.
In that case, you're banging your head against a brick wall.
No, you are.
I'm Morris dancing.
No, I'm Morris dancing. You're banging your head against it. No, we're not, because well, I presume that you're thinking that this is not quite as an appalling episode as I do.
What's more worrying about this is we're not being able to define what she actually meant, which is the correct thing to do.
We've done that for half an hour.
And progress.
We've done that for half an hour. If I can see physical evidence of your otherness, then as a bigot or a racist, I can immediately respond to it. If I can't see it, then I can't immediately respond to it. So my experience of racism as an Irish person is going to be very, very different, even when there were signs up in boarding houses saying no dogs, no blacks, no Irish, than a person who is walking down the street with black skin. Obviously that's true. Obviously that's inarguable. And obviously that's not what she wrote. Otherwise she wouldn't have withdrawn it and apologised.
Right. Here is the thing.
Go on, then.
So obviously, that's correct.
Thank you.
But where we get into difficulty is that we're overanalyzing and we're misunderstanding what she meant, even though we know exactly
We're hitting each other over the head with what she meant, but the scandal is caused by what she said.
Well, we're both intelligent enough to know what she meant, which is different from what she said.
Well, then you're suggesting she's not intelligent enough to say what she means.
We're not intelligent enough to be able to interpret what she meant.
No, we have. We know what she meant. I can defend what she meant, but she didn't say it otherwise. Then we come back to the question. Then we come back to the question of why did she say it had been sent in error? If it didn't do something very different from what she intended to do.
It caused offence that she didn't mean to cause.
Yeah, but she sent it in error, so it didn't do what she meant it to do.
Exactly.
What do you mean exactly? You can't do an exactly at that point in the conversation. It's my turn to do an exactly.
Well, James, you've explained it yourself, and you've explained it very well.
Exactly.
And we all understand, and we should be intelligent enough to be able to move on from this.
I like the point now. So you're saying that's our point of difference, because she has robbed us of the ability to move on from it intelligently by saying that she doesn't regret any of it, John. That's the point. Yes.
You're robbing yourself.
No,
we are robbing ourselves.
All she had to do was say, of course I regret it. So the people that defended her in the way that we have done today, by reminding everybody of what she actually meant to do, have been made to look like fools when she comes out and says, oh no, I don't regret it at all. I don't regret the thing that I wholeheartedly and unreservedly apologised for, and also claimed that I'd done by accident, because obviously I wouldn't have done it consciously or deliberately, because it was so obviously the wrong thing to do. Do you regret any of that? No, I don't. I mean, I can't see how anybody could think that is anything other than disastrous, except with your enormous generosity of spirit when you're saying that the story or the episode hasn't been changed in any way whatsoever by her expression of no regrets. I think it's changed enormously. I think it's pulled the rug from beneath everybody who did what you very powerfully did, and what Mike very powerfully did, which is explain what she meant. But we don't get judged in this world by what we meant. We get judged by what we did. We get judged by what we said, not what we meant to say, not what we meant to do. I think that's obvious, but it could be that it's not as obvious to you as it is to me, and therefore it may not even be right. 10:42 is the time. John, take care. Umar's in Birmingham. Umar, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James. How are you?
Brilliant.
Good. Okay. I've got a bit of a controversial view. So
that's a bit like having a sign up behind you that says you don't have to be mad to work here, but it helps.
Exactly.
Well, go on then.
But if you could hear me out before you tear me apart, that would be much appreciated.
Well, shall I tear you apart now and then hear you out?
No, because...
All right, you carry on. Go on then.
So, first of all, I'm proud of Diane Abbott. She is our current Malcolm X. I hold her up as a hero, as a person of colour. I'm of Pakistani descent, but for me, she is a hero, okay? When she first made the comments, the one thing that I always said at that time, and even to this day, was I was most disappointed with her for apologising for making those comments. She should never have apologised. And I'll get on to exactly why, okay? I'll get on to that.
Go on then.
I do feel that what she said now was correct. And I know that she's gone back on it. And the reason why she's gone back on it is because she regrets her apology. She does regret that she apologised, and that's why now she's gone back, reverted to her position of...
Well, to be fair, she hasn't said any of that. She hasn't said that she regrets apologising. She's just said that she doesn't regret the thing she apologised for. So I, like you, think that is more or less the same thing, but Mike earlier didn't think it was the same thing at all.
It is the same thing. It is the same thing. It's her clever way of saying, listen, I actually stand by my initial comments. I shouldn't have... I shouldn't have apologised, and you know what? I'm getting to a time in my life where it's a case of I think she was pressured into apologising to stay into the Labour Party. I think she may well have been given encouragement by Corbyn and Sultana.
It didn't work, did it? They're staying in the Labour Party business.
No, it didn't work. No,
but this line here, you have to defend this line. You have to tell me why you think she still believes that Jewish people can only be victims of prejudice, not racism, and that the experiences that white people have, whether they're Irish, Roma or Jewish, are to be compared to the experiences of redheads.
Yeah, okay, so I can explain that to you.
Go on then.
And I'm telling you, and listen.
I am.
Let me just tell you one thing. As a person of colour, when I discuss this with any other person of colour, and you could have spoken to any person of colour up and down the country, they recognise that. And they would have agreed with all that.
No, they wouldn't. There's they would. The experience of Jews is like being a redhead.
Let me explain it.
Well, you don't have to explain. You've just said that every person of colour would agree with that, and that's palpably wrong.
Let me explain it.
Even she claims not to agree with it. She says it was sent in error and that she wholeheartedly and unreservedly apologises.
Let me explain it.
Go on, then.
The racism delta between people of colour and Irish and Jewish people, right, is far, far greater than the racism delta between Irish and Jewish people and redheads, okay? You have to accept that. You have to accept...
Are you actually joking?
No, I'm not.
Well, don't make me do this, all right? But why were people killed during the Holocaust?
James, there were people killed in the Holocaust because they were Jewish. But we're talking about...
But the experience is closer to being a redhead.
We are talking about...
Than it is to being, for example, the victim of the slavery Holocaust.
No, this is where it gets nuanced. And this is where you're not...
You're just having a giraffe.
Let me say one sentence and you'll understand.
Go on then.
One sentence. It's the racism of vision, the racism of sight, the racism of appearance.
No, you see, we know that. You're doing it again. Everyone's doing the same thing. Everybody is telling me what she meant to say, but that's not what she said. You can't defend what somebody meant to say.
That's exactly what she was saying.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is, James.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So you honestly believe that the experience of a people that were victimised by the Holocaust, the experience of the Roma, the parasmos. Do you know what they call it? The parasmos, the devouring it means in Roma. And you're saying to them, you've got more in common with redheads than you have with me.
Hold on. And also the experience. Oh,
yes or no, man? Is that what you're saying, or is it not?
The experience of the Bosnian Muslims in Srebrenica. They were white, but they were murdered and genocided because of their Muslim background.
But they've got more in common with redheads than they have with you. That's your argument.
Not more in common. You're distorting.
All right, they're closer on the delta. They're closer on the delta to redheads than they are to you.
Exactly that.
Well, then at least you've been honest. I think that's ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous because
it's ultra ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous.
James, unless you're a person of colour, this is why people who are not of colour, regardless of their religion,
my inbox now is going to explode with people of colour who think you're politely.
No way.
They think you're very wrong.
No way, man. No way. Because listen, if we're walking in a racist town and I'm a Muslim,
different conversation.
No, it's not.
Of course it is.
Conversation.
No one is disputing the fact. Nobody is disputing the fact that the experience of racism is different for people of colour than it is for people who are not immediately other, obviously other, visibly other, but to claim that the latter category, have whatever language you want to use about deltas or more in common with redheads than they do with you is just absurd. I mean, it's
not absurd.
It is absurd.
Because the racism of vision, the racism of appearance, the racism of eyesight...
No, I know what you're saying. It doesn't get less ridiculous the more you say it.
No, because it's far harder hitting.
So why did she apologise?
In the first instance, she shouldn't have apologised.
No, but why did she?
She was forced into an apology.
No, she wasn't.
She
wasn't. No, she wasn't. She could have refused to apologise. She could have said...
She should have refused to apologise.
She could have said, I absolutely think that people with red hair have got more in common with victims of the Holocaust than they have with me.
I was so disappointed in her apologising. I was so disappointed.
We're all disappointed with her. There you go. We found some common ground.
Regained it.
Oh, well, OK. She's regained it by saying that she doesn't regret the thing that she said she only did by accident. Do you think she was lying when she said it was an accident?
Yes.
Oh, so you're calling her a liar now?
I agree with that.
I'm not calling her a liar. You are.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Okay. No, all right, sorry. All right, you don't agree with it. But
you think she's a liar?
Well... lying is a strong term.
Well, no, it isn't.
When you're coerced, I would call it coerced, pressurised.
Do you think she sent it by accident or not?
No.
And there we are. At 10 o'clock this morning, I said the only way you can defend what she's done now is by accusing her of lying then. And here you are doing it.
She sent it in error, but not by accident.
Have a great weekend. It's 10 to 11.
James O'Brien on LBC.
52 is the time. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. So, I mean, as predicted, an awful lot of people are disavowing Uma's comments about redheads and Jewish people, Roma, Irish and people of colour. But I thought he expressed himself quite clearly, and at the end he kind of did the thing that I didn't think anyone would actually do, and proved that in order to defend Diane Abbott today, you have to say that she was lying to us all 2 years ago. I don't know what's better, to be thought a liar or to be thought a fool? God, it sounded quite philosophical, didn't it? 10:53 is the time. There's quite a lot to get through today. I've got an extraordinary guest for you at 11:30. You may remember that he's actually an Oscar winner. Do you remember that film 20 Days in Mariupol? Mstyslav Chernov, the director, has made another film, which is... I mean, it's almost indescribable. But my job, of course, is to find ways of describing it when he joins us shortly after 11:30 today. And in the next hour of the programme, I'm currently thinking about wading into the John Torode conversation. But, yeah. Kate's in Hendon. Kate, what would you like to say?
Oh, yeah. Hi, James. First-time caller.
Hello, Kate.
It's interesting. As a Jewish woman, the idea that anti-Semitism was on a par with, being anti-redhead, I mean, you'd have to ask a eugenicist, actually,
yes.
Back in the day, who were very, in fact, back in the day, anti-Semitism was also conflated with anti-black feeling. With, Jews were accused of having black blood, and there was a lot of very visceral and dodgy
yes.
language being used there. I mean, the thing is, I don't really care why Diane Abbott apologised, whether it was cynical or whether it was expedient or whether she meant it.
Or whether it was sincere,
I think of her as someone who's both very brave and very foolhardy all at once. And she's also come in for a fair amount of racism herself. But what I would say is that this really flags up a sort of obsession with needing to equivocate or to kind of prioritise one sort of discrimination over another. I mean, if someone says to me, do I know what it's like to be a young black man being stopped and searched every day? No, I don't. Do I know what it's like to be immediately recognizable as someone of color? No, I don't. But the idea that these things are somehow in competition, I think that is one of the biggest problems at all. There's this furor about having to justify your right to be discriminated against.
Do you think so?
Well, I think that's happening now increasingly. And I mean, I consider myself...
But it is not. I mean, it's almost as if one half of your point contradicts the other half, in that the experience of somebody who is immediately otherable, for want of a better phrase, is, I think, the difference between their experience and our experience, or your experience more pertinently, I think it's important.
I do as well, and I absolutely.
Well, that's what I mean by you contradicting yourself. Because it can't be important and also something that we equivocate over and shouldn't be bothering to do.
No. But maybe I haven't made I think the point I'm trying to make,
Forgive me.
maybe not very well, is more nuanced than that. I can't know what the experience is like of certain other people who are more obviously, as you put, of colour, and it's important. I mean, that's obvious, right? What I do find, and it's sort of unhelped, of course, by the atrocity of Gaza and all that, is I find the need to defend the fact that anti-Semitism is a thing, almost.
Okay.
You know, that has informed a huge amount of, of my experience and the diasporic experience of being Jewish, which I think people then take to be some sort of apologist, some defense of Israel or something. So I think it's become very knotted up.
It cuts both ways, doesn't it? There's plenty of people who will accuse one of anti-Semitism for condemning Israel, and then they say you're describing the corollary of that, moving in the opposite direction, which was which I find equally wrong and equally ridiculous. But I don't know that. I think that Diane Abbott's point was important, and just so appallingly expressed that it ended up doing infinitely more harm than good.
No, I agree.
It's a funny one, though, because I suppose we all have... I mean, it's not a hierarchy of racism in the sense of which hate you care about more as someone not caught up in it. But there are hierarchies of racism in how society responds to perceived acts of bigotry or perceived acts of racism, and that's something that everybody should be concerned about. Everybody should be invested in, I think.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree, and it's no, completely. But what I think is that there's a wonderful book called Off-White, which is about how we've kind of lost the ability to talk about anti-Semitism in both the left and the right because they're accused of being weaponized on both sides.
Yes, there's some truth in that. I mean, I'm being accused today of being both complicit in genocide and anti-Semitic. So it's evidence of precisely the point you make, although not, I don't think, grounds for ceasing discussions about it. It's a funny one, and I mean, there it is. Unless you're going to call Diane Abbott a liar, you can't defend her in the current moment. And of course, bringing anti-Semitism into the conversation against the backdrop of that particular chapter of the Labour Party's history was always going to be something that attracted an awful lot of attention. And if you're attracting an awful lot of attention for some of the reasons that Kay's just articulated, you should be choosing your words even more carefully than usual. Speaking of choosing your words carefully, by complete coincidence, I have a MasterChef presenter on Full Disclosure this week. Just let that sink in for a minute. No. It's neither of them. It's the new one, but she is absolutely lovely, and it's a really enjoyable interview. And I think we will probably wade into the John Torode conversation after this. But let's squeeze in one more call. Ace is in Tottenham. Ace, what would you like to say?
Yeah. Hi, James. Good to be on. I just wanted to say that we're having a little bit of a, I won't call it silly conversation, but it's about an aha moment, and it diverts from the real point she was trying to make.
Yeah, I agree with that. But that's her fault.
Yes, and I couldn't take that away from you. I think you're completely right. But I think what it highlights is a culture that we're in now where people say sorry for things they're not actually sorry for. What she should have done is taken the time to clarify what she meant, because it was careless. And when you're speaking emotionally and you're speaking in prose sometimes, you say something that actually haven't really thought that through. She should have taken back the kind of foolhardy, lighthearted way she kind of marginalised the experience of other sections of society with like redheads, I think was the word that she used, and taken that back. Not taken back everything she said at the time. That's what has got her into this situation now. So now she's been kind of stumped, and the presenter's gone, aha, I got you. And it's like, well, it's just like stupid. It's silly.
Well, the programme's called Reflections. So, and Jim Naughtie is not a gotcha merchant. He's one of my favourite broadcasters, and he could not have gone to where he went. And he absolutely didn't push her into saying that she has no regrets. So it was just it was like the second round of stupidity, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Or silliness.
Yeah, fair enough. But I do think it really. I mean, the conversation is much wider, as you found out from your previous callers. Yeah. Even the one that we just had is so nuanced that we need to talk about it, like the difference between racism and prejudice, and why black people feel like many white people can't be racist towards. Prejudice, yes, and it's equally as heinous and all that stuff. Like, I've probably had in my life less racist experience, like overt ones, than maybe some Irish people or travellers. But it doesn't mean that the systemic effect against me is any less or worse or more. See what I mean?
Yes, I do. And it's, I mean, this is context in the broadest sense of the word, isn't it? The context of lived experience, and that lived experiences of all of the categories of people we describe are going to be different. And then within those categories, all of the experiences are going to be different. But there's something, I don't know what the correct word is, you probably do, but I'm going to be late for the news. There's something about the sort of tectonic plates of society that define our space and our place. And she was reflecting upon how they are different for different minorities. But she didn't say that, the silly sausage, and that's why she's ended up in all this trouble again. It's 11 o'clock.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 4 minutes after 11, and we wade once again into a racism conversation. That there is obviously a lot of other stuff going on in the world, not least Israel's continuing attempts to essentially raze Gaza to the ground. A brilliant investigation by BBC Verify that I heartily recommend, that makes it crystal clear that rendering that territory uninhabitable is now a very deliberate ploy and policy. Israel, of course, claim that they have to destroy entire neighbourhoods because Hamas is hiding there, or Hamas is hiding things there, but buildings that are already uninhabitable are being razed to the ground for reasons that are rather hard to discern if you reject the notion that it is designed to make the place uninhabitable, unreturnable to. But you can understand why front pages today tend to go in rather different directions. The Daily Express suggests that... well, the Daily Express seems to quote Nigel Farage on the front page every single day, which is an interesting approach to journalism. The Times reports that the data leak that we've been talking about all week includes MI6 spies and military officers. I think as soon as you found out Grant Shapps was involved in this, you knew that it was going to get worse, not better, before the story had been told completely. And then there's quite a lot of coverage of the decision to extend the vote to 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds. And as we predicted, the Daily Mail has bent over backwards to find something negative to say about it. But it is the MasterChef story that continues to dominate much of the discourse. And I'm going to be very personal on this one. And I want you to do the same. It was a really good hour, that last conversation. I found it really helpful, and I found it really compelling. Actually, sometimes you don't have to have a penny drop moment or a pendulum swinging moment. It's just quite nice to stick your head out the window and find out what other people are saying. So I don't know whether you've got all of the detail of the John Torode story. So let me share that with you first, and then you tell me what you think of it. Because at the moment, and I've used the word white privilege quite a lot today, and I've met John Torode and his wife on a couple of occasions, only really in passing, but I've really liked them. And I think it's important to say that, because it probably colours my position, it probably colours my opinion. But the story seems to me to be quite strange. He's been fired for something that he said in... he sang and then said in a conversation 6 or 7 years ago. I presume that his employers are a bit clearer on the absolute fine detail of this. That the person he said it to... There's so many factors here that I want you to talk to me about. The person he said it to did not feel offended by, because the context in which the conversation took place... According to them, according to his interlocutor, there's a word we don't get to use very often on the radio, according to his interlocutor, it was illustrative rather than pejorative. So he was using the N-word as an example in a conversation he was having. He certainly wasn't calling anybody that, and he had already used it previously at an after-work gathering when he was quoting the lyrics from... a track that Kanye West made before he started recording tributes to Adolf Hitler. Good Lord, the world we live in. I mean, that shouldn't even be happening. I mean, how can that even be true? Imagine if you didn't know that, and you just go, well, he's done what, James? I said, yeah, he started doing tribute tracks to Adolf Hitler, mate. Who? Kanye? Yeah. What? Yeah, it's true. And of course, normally it wouldn't see the light of day, but you can you get it up on social media platforms these days. So those are the details. Let me read you how the Sun reports it. I can't remember the last time we did a story from the front of the Sun. MasterChef presenter John Torode was sacked by the BBC for allegedly using the N-word twice. The Sun understands he repeated lyrics from rapper Kanye West's hit Gold Digger, which contain the racial slur, at an after-work gathering 6 or 7 years ago. Torode, 59, is said to have used the word again while chatting to a pal on the production team. And then they quote Richard Osman, who makes a programme with the same production company, saying that he had used the worst racial slur and that the allegations against him were watertight. Torode, meanwhile, vehemently denies ever using the N-word or states that he genuinely cannot remember it happening. And those are the key points. They quote a source in The Sun as saying that the person who raised the complaint didn't say anything at the time, so John only found out a few weeks ago that the issue had been raised. One of the allegations is he said the N-word while repeating Kanye's Gold Digger song during a gathering with his colleagues when filming had ended. John is adamant he would never have used the N-word and only knows the radio version of the song, which says, "Now I ain't saying she a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke. The clean version of the song is the only one he knows." So I'm going to work on the premise that it happened, although with the proviso and the caveat that he insists it didn't, or at least insists he has no memory of it, and according to a source, didn't know the offensive version of Kanye West's track anyway. I want you to tell me whether or not you think it's right that he's been sacked. 0345 6060 So there it is. 6 or 7 years ago, and we're going to work on the presumption that Richard Osman is party to more information than we are. So we're going to work on the presumption that the accusation is watertight. I mean, you can't know that for sure unless you were there. But if you know the person who brought the complaint, then you will have a view of their probity and integrity as well. The crucial point here is that he has been fired, not suspended with the possibility of coming back, but fired for something that happened 6 or 7 years ago that is still a little bit disputed, but not for the purposes of our conversation, and which the person he was talking to didn't complain about. So the person that was party to the context did not complain about it. The person who overheard it did, and they said, the person he was having the conversation with said that he had mentioned the word in reference and apologised straight away. So that, I think, is why Richard Osman is confident that this exchange did actually happen. So the question really is whether or not he should be fired. 0345 6060 is the number that you need. I'm working on the premise that he said the words. And that is really all that matters, I think. But I want you to tell me what you think. Does it matter that it was 6 or 7 years ago? Does it matter that he was quoting a lyric? Did it matter that the person he was talking to didn't complain? Does any of that matter? Or should the punishment have been lower? Should the punishment have been lesser? Listen, I can hold two thoughts in my head at the same time. Bingo! And I feel really sorry for him, but I don't know whether or not it's right that he's been fired. And maybe you're going to have a problem with me for feeling sorry for someone who's used these disgusting words, who's used that disgusting expletive. And that's where the fact that I know him a bit comes into my thinking, for good or for ill. I can't believe for a minute that he would have used the word with malice, and nobody's claiming that he did. But it is that word. It's a very, very short list of things that you can never, ever say. As a white person, you can never ever say those words. Plenty of black people think you should never ever say that word, but that's a debate for people of colour to have. It's not a debate that we have or I have any particular stake in. But I want to know whether or not you think he should have been fired, and I want to know why you think what you think. All right, and that's it. Hit the numbers now. You will get through. 0345 6060 is the number that you need. And there'll be some parallels with the conversation that we had in the last hour. Let me pick up on a couple. Here's one. So Diane Abbott is meant to know exactly how her words land with the communities she highlighted, yet the white guy, old enough to understand how the N-word was used as an insult by white people to black people, feels happy to use it where it could be overheard by anyone without the full context. I see no difference between the two, and they have both been sacked from their jobs for now. I don't think you can quite do that, Sheena. I could be wrong, but he didn't send a letter to the Observer committing this offence. He used it and immediately apologised and did it in conversation with somebody who was not offended. I don't know. Does that sound like an exercise in hair splitting? I don't know how helpful it is going to be to make comparisons with the Diane Abbott story. I don't see many myself, except that it is, of course, a conversation about racism, and I'm profoundly uncomfortable to discover that I've got enormous sympathy for both of them. As I said at the outset, I wish Diane's legacy was defined by her pioneering politics and personal achievements rather than by these faux pas that have plagued her in recent years. You may consider the latest event to be much more than a faux pas. But should the fella have been fired? 0345 6060 973. I don't know how helpful it is when people like Christine Hamilton gallop to your defence, but people that know the man, I think, have a degree of deserving to be heard. If the picture of him being painted by elements of this story bears no resemblance at all to what they know, then they deserve to be heard. But does he deserve to be fired? That's it. There's going to be an awful lot of rationale and justification, explanation on this one, but I want to know what you think. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. It's 16 minutes after 11. If you hit those numbers now, you will get through, but don't hang around.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 17 minutes after 11, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the decision to fire John Torode for using the vilest racial slur in a private conversation 6 or 7 years ago is going to divide opinion. Some people will want to draw comparisons with the treatment of Diane Abbott. Let me read you this from Dan. LBC 10 to 11, viciously attacking a black lady for saying something clumsy about how she sees race. Describing Diane Abbott's legacy as glorious and regretting that the things she described as indefensible is going to colour the coverage of her life isn't really viciously attacking a black lady, Dan, but you do you. And now Dan's hearing someone saying it's okay for my friend to say the N-word. And Dan's listening to the same programme you are. John Torode's not my friend. I've met him 2 or 3 times in passing, and I thought he was very nice. I also really like his wife. I absolutely don't think it's okay to say the N-word. I'm wondering whether you think he should have been fired for saying it in the circumstances in which he said it. But, it's always helpful to be reminded that some people can be listening to the same radio programme that you're listening to and hearing something completely different. Harry's in Leicester. Harry, what do you think?
Hi, James.
Hello.
I think that, I've just had a conversation with your producer, and I think deserve to be fired, expected to be fired. I think he should expect to be fired. You can't say that word at work. All of us know that. We're not children. I agree with you. I think he could be a nice guy. It probably was meant with no malice. The person that he said it to might not have been offended. I mean, I have a mixed race background, and there's certain white people that could say that word to me and I wouldn't be offended because I would know that they meant it with no malice. If they were singing a song, if they were just trying to be a bit...
But remember that this was an after-work meeting, so it's with colleagues, but it's not on the company shilling. And if I overheard your white friend say it to you and complained, you think your friend should get fired?
I think if you were a colleague and it was a colleague's after-work gathering, I mean, we don't know to what extent it was the way you described it or the way the story describes it, it sounds like immediately after work, all colleagues present or only colleagues present.
I imagine they were drinking after filming, I imagine, or socialising after filming.
Yeah, so although you're not on company time, you are surrounded by your colleagues, and I think it's just all of us that work in a corporate setting or in the public sector, like.
It's like a guillotine. I don't mean that in a judgmental way. It is just one of those things that brooks no debate at all. Except you introduced some elements of debate, because some of your white friends with whom you might be comfortable using the word will be colleagues, former or current colleagues, right?
Go
on.
When I said that, I wasn't thinking of colleagues, but
okay.
I mean, I don't think that's unfair to say.
No.
I think that if I searched my memory, I could find a colleague.
And if I overheard it and reported him, I don't think you'd think he should be fired, because he was talking to you and you knew what was going on. I
wouldn't. Okay, I think this is where we come back to deserve to be fired or expect to be fired.
Yes.
Deserve to be fired morally it's a grey area, depending on the circumstance, depending on the people, depending on how limited it was to other colleagues that were there.
Yeah.
But expect to be fired, definitely. Like, you're not an idiot.
I think that's Richard Osman's position, isn't it? As far as I can tell, I haven't listened to the podcast where he said it, but he's just essentially saying it's the worst racial slur there is, and they found it to be substantively true. They found evidence they were happy with. Exactly. He said that he couldn't remember it, but this one was upheld if it is proven to the satisfaction of the court that this thing happened, then the sentence is sacking.
Exactly. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Well, I'm agreeing with you. I mean, you're changing my position. It's not a question of whether you guys. Yeah. I was just praising your point. I was summing up your point. I wasn't making my own at that point.
And we can argue, like, it's. I think maybe you can argue that even if it was meant with no malice, like, you probably shouldn't be using those words.
It's not a word that's ever passed my lips. It's not a word that's ever passed my lips in any circumstances whatsoever.
I mean, just in case someone's offended, like, and someone might feel a bit discriminated against, someone might feel unsafe. How hard is it not to say?
And how? Can I ask you a question? How? Sure. I mean, because I'm going to get texts from people who are not disclosing their own ethnicity.
Right.
And that makes it a bit tricky for me, because if a white person is telling me that it's not a sackable offence, they are not party to the power that word has. From a negative point of view, they don't know. But do you see what I mean? I don't know. I mean, how much white privilege do you hear in my introduction when I'm humming and hawing about whether or not he should have been fired in the first place at all? And you just say that's a red card offence. That's a straight red card.
I mean, I
be honest.
Kind of mentioned my
Don't spare my feelings. Don't spare my feelings.
To colour my opinion.
Yeah.
And if I'm being completely honest, I think I missed the point of your question.
Well, does your opinion matter more than mine? I think it probably does. I think it almost.
I think that also relates to the deserve or expected. Expected to be fired, it does not matter. Deserve to be fired, maybe. I'm not sure whether. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. No. But I think when you say it's a red card offence, it's for want of a better phrase, black or white, and you're supposed. Yeah, it's to take any ambiguity out of it and make the rules clear.
And none of those other factors that I think might matter to you, and you're I think being more convincing than I am. But 6 or 7 years ago, the context in which it was said. I mean, I forget who it is, but it's a comedian. I think I know who it is, but I don't want to say who I think it is in case I get it wrong. But if it doesn't have the word "you" in front of it, then it is a very different word from when it does. And this is a comedian of colour. So if I say "you so-and-so," that's very different from saying, here's a song lyric containing the word so-and-so, and then I say the word. They're obviously two very different propositions. And you can't read, for example, Mark Twain out loud without saying that word out loud. I don't know if this sounds like hair splitting, but would John Torode have been fired if he'd been reading Tom Sawyer out loud at work? Context or not context? Because if there's no room for context, if it's a straight red card, if it's black and white, then he'd be fired for reading out Mark Twain in the same way that he'd be fired for quoting Kanye. That's kind of moving back again now. My pendulum's swinging back again now from the certainty that Harry's certainty was quite contagious, wasn't it? But I think the Mark Twain point is powerful. You may not. Jules is in Banbury. Jules, what would you like to say?
Hey, James, long-time listener, big fan. I can't believe I got through to you.
Well, here we are. What did you want to say?
I know, of all the subjects. Basically, I'm a mixed race guy, also a DJ as well, so probably quite well-versed in a few of these things, because I play a lot of R&B and hip-hop songs.
And would you play, what's the opposite of the radio edit? Would you play the original track?
This is what I was going to say. I mean, personally, I think it's an absolute disgraceful word. Should be locked away. But because it's in these songs, you can't expect people not to sing them. And I've been in gigs where people are singing away, but I wouldn't take offence to that.
Right.
It's not an offensive term if it's just in that way. It's not like he's put it in print. It's not like he's, like you said you are or it's not like he's been racist to anybody. He's just made a maybe an error in judgment. But I don't think it should be
no one is accusing him of having been racist.
No, and this is the thing, because a lot of connotations could be that people are taking offence on other people's behalf. But when you ask the actual people that could be affected in that situation, I'd probably say a lot of people would be like, well, as long as he's not being offensive with it, then fair enough.
Yeah, except, God, I knew this would happen this hour, because Harry dragged me over to his side of the argument, and you're dragging me back over to yours. And now I'm feeling Harry's voice in my ear, pointing out that you can't make it nuanced. It's either a word that you never ever say in a work environment, whether you're socialising with colleagues or whether you're on the company shilling, or it's a word that is acceptable sometimes. And if it's going to be acceptable sometimes, who the hell are we going to put in charge of deciding?
Exactly. And then, if it's in a karaoke situation, he could edit himself maybe, but at the same time, I wouldn't be like climbing the walls if he just dropped the word in. I mean, you love a bit of pop culture, I know. The film White Chicks. Great film when they're all sat in the car.
Would it get made now?
Possibly. I mean, you could do it in a way, but I think, a lot of things would be questionable. But the whole basis of that film that gets misconceived is the fact that he's taking the mickey out of everybody, and it's using stereotypes in a positive way, not necessarily derogatory. So I think it's a clever film in that way, but they do cover that particular issue where they're like, oh, are we allowed to say that word?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there is only two answers. There are only two answers to that question, and it is either never or sometimes. Oh, I suppose you'll have some people saying, whenever you want, but I don't know that they're part of our conversation today. So it is either never or sometimes, and if it's sometimes, then when? So never is much easier to defend, but when? If it's sometimes. Thank you, Jules. That was a sparkling debut. I look forward to your next call. Are you playing this weekend at all?
No, weekend off, thankfully.
Well, so that's nice. Enjoy it. Yes, well, stay safe. It is coming up to 11:30, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. All the DJs are coming out now. Graham's in Warrington. Graham, what would you like to say?
Yeah, another DJ, mate.
Everyone's a bloody DJ, aren't they?
Yeah.
These days. Go on, what do you want to say?
I gave it up a couple of years ago, but I was at my height of my career when that song was out.
Right.
And when it first came out, there wasn't a radio edit available. Okay. It's only once it gets famous and, then they decide they have to dull it down and what have you. But I've played it and had 2,000 people happily singing along to it. Both races, all races, and no one is offended. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said you put the word you in front of it. It's like saying the female version of a dog. You can say that in a David Attenborough sense, but you can't put the word you in front of it.
I can come with you halfway on that. I personally, I don't think that quite works, but I understand the point you're trying to make. I would never use. I would never use that word. But would I, in a club, if everyone else was singing it? Would I join in? I doubt it. But if I was a kid, I might have done. I don't know. But that's not quite what he did.
Anyway, but
that's not quite what he did. Yes.
I've had other songs that people have done on karaoke and with offensive words in, and people don't seem to bat an eyelid. Whereas if it was used in the wrong context in the same bar, you can guarantee somebody would rightly so be offended.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so I think it's how it's used.
Well, there's two things here. There's the lyric, quoting the lyric. I don't think it was quite karaoke, but there is the quoting of the lyric. But then there is the using the word again in a conversation that was overheard, and that's what the complaint was about, I think, rather than the quoting of the lyric.
Yeah, I think the other guy got it as well when he said it's people being offended on someone else's behalf.
You're swinging me. No, because it's either never acceptable or it's sometimes acceptable. And in conversation, not when you're reading out Tom Sawyer. I don't know what idiot came up with that idea. Or when you're quoting a song lyric. That's not in conversation. You see, if it's in conversation and you use the word, it's a red card offence.
Yeah, I do agree with that, absolutely.
It's a bit more nuanced than perhaps some of the coverage allows. And I haven't listened to the Richard Osman podcast, but I'm a huge admirer of his. Almost everything he's ever done, I'm a huge admirer of. And he does that podcast with Marina Hyde, who should be available on prescription on the NHS, her journalism. But apparently he does go further into some of the detail. And he would know, because before he became a TV star, he was a very high-ranking TV executive. And he will know a lot about this. And apparently goes considerably further in the podcast than the Sun has gone today. It is 31 minutes after 11, and Dominic Ellis has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:34, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we are joined in the studio. It's not every day you get an Oscar winner and a Pulitzer Prize winner sitting opposite you in the studio, but that is a mark of the success of the work of my guest for the next few minutes. Mstyslav Chernov made the film 20 Days in Mariupol, and it is his new film that concerns us today. 2,000 metres to Andriivka.
That is correct.
Did I say that right?
Right, that is correct.
It's hard to describe it, Mstyslav. It feels almost too visceral for the audience, but that, of course, was your intention.
Would you like me to describe it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's on the surface is a very simple story. It's a story about the platoon in summer 2023 counteroffensive as the Ukrainian army was progressing to liberate some of the Ukrainian territories from Russian occupation. So it's a story of the platoon who has to move through 2,000 meters of forest, a little forest between two minefields to reach the village of Andriivka, hence the name 2,000 meters to Andriivka. So on the surface is a very simple story with a very simple task of raising the flag in the end of it. But as we progress through those 2,000 meters, we realize that what is a walking distance for, say, a Londoner or a couple minutes drive for those guys is 3 months bloody fight for their survival. And it's a symbol of the Ukrainian liberation.
And of course, there are echoes, as you clearly intend, of the First World War, with trench warfare. When we sort of, as a schoolboy, I read about meters, thousands of deaths for the sake of a few meters.
Yeah, we did discover that comparison, especially, I was shooting this film while I was campaigning and screening with 20 Days in Mariupol. So there would be screenings of 20 Days in Los Angeles and in London and New York and Paris. And from there, I would fly to Poland and take a car and drive to Kyiv, take a train and take another car and get in the trench. And this short journey would be a journey 100 years back, because when you are in those trenches you feel like it's 100 years before our time, or it's maybe even a different planet. So I was thinking about paintings of Paul Nash and writing of Remarque and Hemingway. All those references came to me.
Talking of feelings, you would literally be receiving news of deaths on the front line in the platoon while you're on red carpets at film ceremonies. I know that this is, you won't want to talk about you. We're here to talk about the film, but I just wonder how you cope with that, how you deal with that dichotomy.
Again, I would I would insist that my feelings in this case are less relevant than the feelings of men or when women I'm telling the stories of. But I do remember clearly the moment when we were receiving BAFTA here in London, and the news came of one of the soldiers we were following, one of our protagonists, had been killed in operation in a fight for another forest in another village. That was devastating, and I remember I came on a stage and I said, please, let's keep fighting, let's just keep... That was sadness, but also there is a certain kind of understanding of reality that you have to fight for your freedom, you have to fight for your land. And just watching these soldiers, me as a journalist and a filmmaker, being able to watch their process, their resolve, their courage, made me a stronger person.
I mean, most, or certainly many of the men that you filmed and that were filmed, and that also wore body cams to provide you with the footage, they died.
Yes, they did, and some of this is recorded on cameras. It is devastating, but also I think this is what makes this film and the entire documentary genre right now is moving forward. And it makes it very unique because we are as an audience, me as a director, we as an audience can finally experience what these men are going through while they are on the front line of Europe. And it's not just stories that spoken with words or paintings. These are just experiences we all get to live through with them because of these cameras.
Did they have a relationship with the filmmaking process as well, these men? They talk about their wife, but they also talk... I'm thinking of Shaver when he says that he doesn't want you to film him because he hasn't done anything heroic yet. He hasn't done anything yet. It's hard to articulate what the film would have meant to them, but it clearly meant something.
I know it meant to their families. Yeah. His wife came to us after the screening of this film in Ukraine, and she came and she said now his grandson will be able to see who his grandfather was, and that was the last of him recorded ever, and that will stay with the family. That's heartwarming moment when he talks about his wife and his grandson, and that's everything for his family.
Did you learn anything yourself, or are you just chronicling?
I'm chronicling. I am asking questions.
Yes.
But I have to say this: in the past 6 months, but also probably in the past 2 years, I learned something very important. The political situation in the world was so volatile. I went to some of the talks. I witnessed some of the crises among the politicians, and I keep watching, and I can see that when I go back to those trenches, I can see how that's all very, very far from real people that are on the front line. The real people that are right now on the front line and fighting for these meters, the real civilians that are protected by Ukrainian soldiers in their cities from occupation, they don't really care about what US has to say, what UK has to say, what Europe has to say. They learned, and I learned, that when you are there on the front line, the only person you can rely on is right next to you. And those cities are still not occupied because of men like in this platoon that I was filming.
That's another element that is hard to process, because there's a bleakness to the message of meters, to the metric of meters, and of course it speaks to a futility of war in general. But what they're fighting for is not mere meters; they're fighting for freedom. So there are two things going on at the same time. There's the epic, and then there is the micro almost.
Yeah, and you see, war is such a complex and paradoxical matter. It's the worst thing that humanity have ever done, and of course that has to be reflected in a film about war. But at the same time, this film is being about meters and about the futility, but at the same time is about survival. It's not. I remember yesterday during the screening of this film, I had a question. Well, does it seem futile to you fighting for these meters back and forth? And I realized that it's not. It's sort of a wrong question, because for Ukrainians and for me too, this is not fight for just meters. This is fight for survival. Well, someone came into your house. Someone broke into your house, shot your relatives, shot your friends, and is trying to take your house. And if you trying to fight back is not fight for the rooms of your house. This is fight for just you to survive. So Ukrainians are not actually just fighting for this land. They're fighting, they're deciding whether they're gonna live tomorrow or not. That's what's important to remember.
There are two audiences, I suppose. There is the domestic audience. The Ukrainians will watch this, and then there is the rest of us. There's the international audience. Will they take different things away from it? Well,
I'd love to think about this film as more universal,
of course,
and appealing to everyone. And besides, I would love to think that Ukrainians and Europeans are not, and British people are not different. We are all part of the same system of values that our Ukrainians are currently fighting for on those front lines, and that fight you see in 2,000 meters to Andriivka. So,
but there's a difference between knowing that it could be you, or it could be your son, it could be your father.
This film is all about distances, it's 2,000 meters, but it's not 2,000 meters. It's about Russians saying it's going to take them only 24 hours for their tanks to reach Bundestag in Germany. It's Russians are saying on their TV to their people that it's going to take only 20 minutes for their nuclear bombs to reach London every day. They say that to their own people. And that's their reality. So it is about the bringing closer European audience and Ukrainian audience to the soldiers who are actually right now on the front line of Europe.
Because the isolation of the soldiers is a recurring theme in the film as well. Isolation from everything, really.
Yeah, that is a theme that probably deserves its own film. The isolation of people who spend years in trenches, and them feeling distant from people who choose not to see this war. And I hope this film also, I remember reaction of the soldiers who watched this film. They walked out of it. We had like a secret screening for them. They walked out of a cinema and they collided with the audience that came out of other great films like Lilo Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon or Formula One. And then they told me, Mstyslav, we really, really want people to go and see our film, to see our experience. We want that distance between us and people who live peaceful lives to be shorter.
Gosh. The moments of death, you cut to black in the film. Was there I think I read somewhere there was some debate about how you would handle those moments.
The debate is not about how do we handle those moments. The debate is how do we portray in a most realistic way the experience of the soldier on the front line. And there are two answers to that. First answer, in order to do that ethically right, I have to be there. I have to go through that experience too. And two, when you edit, you also speak to soldiers, you also talk about their experience and how they remember. So in a way, parts of the film that are portrayed from the body cam footage, they reflect the way the soldiers remember those moments. One of the scenes is partially even edited by one of the soldiers, the way he remembered it. So of course, when the camera goes to black, it's not just an ethical decision, it's also a decision of how do you portray that experience. When a bomb goes off next to you, you close your eyes. When your friend gets shot, you blink in horror, and then you run towards him. That's what we tried to communicate with the cinematic language.
You mentioned the necessity of being there.
Yeah.
You're not staying there when you're there.
It's true.
That takes a toll, I imagine.
Yeah, you always the guilt. you go there, and then your risk is always much less than the risk of those who bring you there and who's there every day. So, of course, it's never the same. But you do have to take risks. You do have to make those decisions. But when you get out from there and you know that they are staying, and you also keep thinking all the time, was this enough? Did I speak enough to these men? Did I get close enough to them? And the most tragic thought that you could possibly have when you go to their funerals months later or days later, when you go to their funerals and you realize that you heard their real names for the first time at their funeral, because you keep addressing each other with a call sign, and that's so normal on the front line. But the real name comes only in the times of mourning. But this is film about memory and names, and it opens with Hemingway's quote about names too.
And about universality. That's possibly the trickiest thing to convey to people listening to this is it's a film that reminds us that it could be us. And
it's not only about right now,
sure,
it's about tomorrow, but it's also about 100 years ago and about 1,000 years ago. And I think a lot of people will see British soldiers, same experience that the British soldiers were going through in Europe 100 years ago, in this film too. So the song goes far beyond the experience of Ukrainian military.
I don't know that people will have ever seen anything quite like it, and I urge anybody to go and watch it. It's got a cinema release. Is it going to be streaming? Do we know yet what the...
It gets the cinema release on the 1st of August here, and then it will be eventually released on streamings, of course, that a bit later after the festivals and theatrical releases.
Mstyslav Chernov, thank you. 2,000 meters to Andriivka, as you heard, will be in your cinemas on the 1st of August, and I will be reminding you of that when the moment comes. It's 11:49.
James O'Brien on LBC.
11:53 is the time, and goodness me, there are days, aren't there, where you recognise that some of the stuff that concerns us is as nothing compared to some of the things that are going on in the world, most obviously Gaza and Ukraine, but not exclusively. And Mstyslav there reminding us of the quotidian, the daily experience of men like me in that country, in Ukraine, in those trenches. It's an extraordinary piece of filmmaking that you'll be able to watch from August the 1st. And we return to the conversation that we were having before, which is not trivial, by the way. Let's make that absolutely clear. One of the great lies we tell ourselves from a very, very early age is that sticks and stones may break our bones, but words will never hurt us. Of course that's not true. Otherwise there wouldn't be words that are considered verboten. There wouldn't be words that I would get fired or certainly into huge amounts of trouble for simply saying into this microphone at this moment. And sometimes the offence is visceral and personal, and sometimes it's more social and general. But the N-word is among the most offensive words of all, because it is synonymous with hatred directed at black people by white people through the ages. It's why, if it needs explaining, it's ethically, philosophically, semantically very different when it comes from the mouth of a black person, although not everybody agrees with that, of course, and not every black person agrees with that. That's the rationale, that's the thinking behind it. And John Torode, the MasterChef presenter, used that word in company, originally while quoting a song lyric, and secondly in a private conversation with somebody who didn't complain, but it was overheard, it was reported, it was a post-work gathering of colleagues, and therefore he has, 7 years after the event, been fired. Is that fair? 11:55 is the time. John's in Oakley. John, what do you reckon?
Oh, James, I'd just like to say, I called in before your last guest, and now it does seem trivial.
Well,
I know you said it isn't, but it
welcome
does,
to my world.
It does seem trivial.
Yes, I take your point.
I don't believe that he should have been fired. I believe it's a real grey area, because you don't want to create a two-tier system where some people in a society can say a word. Obviously, no one can say it being offensive, or no one should say it. aiming to cause offence. But I don't think anyone's suggesting that was the case. So
and that changes it. That's when it's not. That's when it becomes possible to argue that it's not a red card offence, because it is just a collection of letters that are very, very offensive in some circumstances, but were not in this circumstance.
But would we be having this conversation if it was a black person who had said that? Would he have been fired if it was a black person who said that? And if not, and the intent was the same, to not cause any offence, then that is a two-tier.
It's not, though. No, it's not. It's no. It's and also it's not just black people. Jewish people can deploy words that that anti-Semites might use as a pejorative. They can reclaim them. I mean, you think about Tottenham Hotspur being a fine example of that, and some very powerful debates have been had about the wisdom or otherwise of that. Quoting a song can get filed under something a little more nuanced, but not using the word in conversation otherwise. And if, for people who don't know, the historical argument is pretty watertight. It's a question of reclaiming. So the word has been synonymized.
James O'Brien on LBC.
With hatred, with slavery, with persecution, with murder, and by taking it out of the mouths of their abusers and putting it into their own mouths, they rob the word of its power. And simultaneously, of course, it remains a word that you can't use as a white person without causing great offence. And that's where we are. So the question is, did he use it without causing great offence? And I don't know, and you don't know, and even the person that complained doesn't know.
No, but he said it.
But he said it, and that is probably going to be enough for whoever the judge is in this case, his employer. He said it. Is there any dispute about he said it? We've investigated.
He didn't say it.
Well, but they've investigated and decided that he did.
Then he's got to go, hasn't he? I've changed my mind now, so
yeah,
he's got to go.
Well, that's a problem with listening to this programme, John.
I have conversations like this at length, and I could between me and a friend, we call it the word he can say and I can't say.
Yeah.
And I've never said the word.
It's interesting.
And it's in a jovial manner.
Of course.
That word that I can't say and he can say in Paris, to quote another Kanye song.
Yeah.
Listen,
it can be confusing, and that's the best explanation I've got about taking it out of the mouths of abusers and
it's a very good one.
I think it is. It does the job for me, but it doesn't in any way make people who are confused by it dodgy or part of the problem. They're just we are just all confused sometimes. I'll tell you what you should do. You should listen to Tim Minchin's song Prejudice, which is absolutely brilliant. Everyone should listen to more Tim Minchin anyway. And that takes us back to Richard at the top of the show asking for music recommendations. There it is. That's today's recommendation. Any Tim Minchin. Stuff is just genius, but Prejudice is a particularly powerful piece. Thank you, John. Thanks for your honesty as well. I like that. I've got friends who can say the word, but that you can't, and there is something outwardly anomalous about that. So what do you do when you're confused or when you think something is a bit anomalous? You try and work it out. Try and dig into why. If you do that, you might change your mind. It's coming up to 12 noon. I think we've all earned a complete change of pace in the next hour. I'm drawn to the story about parents wanting the summer holidays to be shorter, for reasons that may surprise you and may not, because you can't see it yet, but this story is actually quite similar to quite a few stories that we talk about together.
James O'Brien on LBC.
3 minutes after 12 is the time. I love these little moments. I think you sometimes forget that the traffic goes both ways. So, the connections that you build up with a radio programme. The radio programme builds up connections with you as well. I love this image that Norman paints, albeit that it does involve some nudity. I don't know whether that counts as a trigger warning. For goodness sake, James, he writes, almost. I love you, but I got out of the shower and ran dripping to my phone to tell you about Tim Minchin's Prejudice. Then, as I was standing there typing, I hear you telling listeners to look it up. That's how we work. That's how we roll. I love that. It's a nice little moment of community. I like this story because, what did we call it? We came up with a name for it. Was it In My Dayitis? It's not In My Dayitis. That's the often mistaken belief that things were better when we were doing it. But that thing we talked about. A couple of people have sent me a very very poignant clip of Jacob Rees-Mogg being interviewed and talking about how he's never cried as an adult, as if that's something to be proud of. It's a wonderful example of something I've talked to you about a lot, something I've written about what happens to you at public school. It happens to us in all sorts of areas of life, but the public school happens to be the thing that I know, where in order to survive, you become a completely inauthentic version of yourself. You live in a state of complete emotional denial, because that's the only way you can deal with the brutality of the environment. And one imagines, and as someone who finds him ridiculous, I take no pleasure at all in saying that one imagines that he was pretty brutally bullied at school, and the way that you get through that is by pretending that nothing hurts you. And that's how you end up being a man in your 50s who thinks it's something to be proud of that you didn't cry when your dad died. Heartbreaking, really. But I mention it because we all have an inbuilt inability to accept that the way we did things when we were young was wrong. I mean, could almost tie it into the two conversations that we did. Was it old gititis? Was it? Thank you, James. I've come up with some lovely words over the years. You could almost tie it into the conversations we were having previously. It's the first time we've ever done an hour about the N-word without anybody bringing the dog of the dam busters into it, which is utterly pointless and unhelpful, except insofar as it reminds us that things really do change. And just because something used to be acceptable or used to be considered to be a good idea doesn't mean that it still is now. Do you see what I mean? But we take it personally, particularly parents, I find. You sort of say to someone who's of a different generation, to your own parents' generation perhaps, oh, we don't do that now. And they take it as a personal insult. They think, well, it was perfectly all right when we did it. I said, well, it wasn't actually, but we just didn't know that then. Corporal punishment. I tell children now about being beaten at school. And I could be out of a Charles Dickens novel for how alien and ridiculous it feels to them. But go back 40 years and it was happening all over the shop. Still is in some other countries, some other societies. So, this strange reluctance to acknowledge that progress is normally a force for good. I remember when the penny dropped for me, we were talking about university, and I suddenly realised that I had no qualifications whatsoever to talk about university, because it's 30 years since I went to one. And yet somehow I was conducting radio phone-ins based upon what things were like 30 years ago. You probably still hear the occasional radio phone-in like that. You get it a lot with money. You still get people ringing in to say, I don't know what young people are complaining about. I worked 2 jobs to buy my first house. And you say, oh, okay, what was your overall income then? And they'll say, £2,000. And how much was your first house? £6,500. Oh, right, yeah, things have not changed at all. Everything's exactly the same. And the lessons you learnt in 1952 are perfectly relevant in 2025. Or the lessons I learnt in 1976, 1986, 1996 are very, very relevant, utterly They're not. Things change. And sometimes, when society changes, we are the most reluctant to acknowledge it. Because it means somehow, somewhere, we get the notion that what we did was wrong and we feel judged. We feel like people are saying, oh, no, what you did was wrong. So look, beating children was wrong. Have you got the first idea what topic we're going to talk about now? I bet you haven't. And I think it will surprise you. And you may not even think that it is relevant to the bit that we were talking about before. 8 minutes after 12 is the time. When we were kids... All right, if you went to a school like mine, you got 8 weeks off in the summer. Private schools always got an extra week at the beginning and an extra week at the end. And that summer holiday was, it's probably the closest I'll come to trying to write a poem these days. That sense you had was close to unique. That sense you had at the beginning of a summer holiday. With Christmas and Easter, you could see the end, right? With Christmas and Easter, you could see the end of the tunnel. You knew you'd be going back. At the beginning of the summer holiday, and I think this would hold true if you were unfortunate enough to be only getting 6 weeks off in the summer, but it felt like it might never end. Right? It was so extraordinary, that thought of freedom, that amount, and most of us had nothing to do. Very little by way of responsibility or even homework. And I don't know, looking back, whether or not everybody hated school as much as some of us did. I just got so bored. I'd be so bored at school, always so bored, boring, bored. The lessons I was okay, but the lessons do you remember double maths? Do you remember the feeling in your tummy when you woke up on a double maths day? Whatever that feeling is, the first day of the summer holidays is the chemical opposite. You'd look at that road rolling in front of you and you'd think, what are we going to do? Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build a fort. I'm going to play tennis against a brick wall. I'm going to do 1 million. I'm going to count up to 1 million hits. It's just so wonderful. So why are parents now agitating for a shorter break? A plurality of parents want the 6-week summer holiday to be cut to a month. And this is proper research. It's been undertaken by The Times. Most teachers also support a 4-week break as long as they don't lose the total amount of holiday they get throughout the year. It's this weekend, I think today, state schools start breaking up and pupils will be off until early September. The only adults who get that kind of deal, apart from teachers, are members of parliament. And I know you're not on holiday, you're doing lots of important work in your constituency, especially in Clacton. But allow me a little moment of facetiousness. And the reasons given include the fact that children regress academically. They go back to school in September. They've forgotten half the stuff they did the previous year. And the parental point of view, I think, comes from the fact that it's so hard to do. And that's what I mean by things changing. The world we inhabit changes, and yet we don't think that the things that we do should change. And that's my question for you. What are the summer holidays like? When my kids were younger, Mrs. O'Brien's work was very flexible. That wasn't always going to be the plan, but it was also, of course, a situation where I was finishing work at 1 o'clock. I think I finished work at 12 o'clock when they were tiny. Or was that? I can't remember. Anyway, I was finishing work at 1 o'clock like I do now. And on a good day, I can be out of the door by 5:15. So in the summer holidays, we could muddle through quite easily the fact that our children needed us to be there most of the time. I can't imagine what it's like if your normal is when you're both going to work and the kids are at school. So you might be working to a 3:30 deadline, or you might be moving around the scheduling, or grandma might help out. But how big a hassle does it? What I'm really interested in is the opposite of what the child feels. So I am being now 10-year-old James. 10-year-old James breaks up today for the summer holidays. I'm not sure we ever achieve that sort of happiness again in our lives. There's many different kinds of happy, and I'm not saying it's more happy than... it's not like the happiest day of my life was the day we broke up for the summer holidays. But do you remember singing? We break up, we break down, we don't care if school falls down. No more English, no more French, no more sitting on... And I sang that with such gusto. 10 is a great age. 10, 11 is a great age because you're not into girls yet, which frankly just makes everything confusing and difficult. It's just such pure childhood. That first day of the summer holiday. It's nothing like it. Nothing like it. The opposite is what I want to talk about today. I want to talk to parents who absolutely blooming dread it. Listen, the boring phone-in is... I shouldn't say the boring phone-in because we're actually going to have it. Should we shorten the summer holiday? 0345 6060 973. Should we shorten the summer holiday? Teachers, parents, pupils, past and present, should we shorten the summer holiday? 03, and why? Why do you want it shortened, or indeed, why don't you? Why do you want it to stay exactly as it is now? 0345 6060 973. But... just in my ongoing quest, in my endless quest to see the world through other people's eyes, what's it like when the summer holidays means that your life is going to be thrown into incredible turmoil, just for a relatively small period of time, although it doesn't feel like that in the minute, because your children will soon be old enough to be left at home during the summer holidays. But when they're not, how disruptive are the summer holidays? So are there parents listening to this? Are you listening to this now feeling whatever the opposite of being 10 years old and the first day of the summer holidays is? How disruptive? How difficult? So the clever question, or not the clever question, the clever response would be a teacher explaining to me how children regress, a teacher explaining to me why it would be better for everybody if the holidays were shorter. But I'm trying to tap into something that you might be reluctant to talk about. I'm trying to tap into the way the world has changed for parents. It is rare now that one parent can be available for an entire day, an entire summer holiday. So as the summer holidays approach, how much do you dread them? Hand on heart. Give me a ring if you dread them, because they're just so hard to navigate and so hard to negotiate. All right? 0345 60 60973. So we're conducting 2 phone-ins. The first one is the obvious one. That doesn't mean it's better or worse than the other one. It's the obvious one. And the obvious one is this. Should we still be having such long summer holidays for our schools, for our school children? And I want you to ring me and tell me. 0345 60 60973 why you think it's ridiculous that we get 6 weeks off, or why you think it's ridiculous that anybody would suggest that we shouldn't. But what I really want as well, the less obvious one, is that sense that I've never heard anyone articulate before. But I've been thinking about this for 2 days now, because the story was around late Wednesday, and I just sort of thought, how the hell do you cope if you're normal? Because it's stressful, right? Having young children. You're both working and you just about hold it together during term time. You can just about juggle. You got this, you got the after school club, but that goes. So it's stressful during term time, keeping all the plates spinning. That's what I'm trying to convey. It's stressful during term time, keeping the ship afloat, keeping everything under control. And then the holidays come along and you can't even remember how you got through the last one because it's so bloody difficult. That's what I want you to talk to me about today. 0345 60 60 973 is the number that you need. And does it fit into that category of conversations that I've touched on a lot in the past with you, where we're just a bit slow catching up with the fact that things have changed so much that the way we are behaving has become ridiculous? Is a 6-week summer holiday now actually ridiculous and almost impossible to navigate? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. Remember, this is our last topic of the week. So I've chosen quite deliberately to do something that's not too heavy duty, but I kind of need to know whether or not there are people who approach, there are parents who approach the summer holidays with a sense of dread. And the more I think about it, the more I think there must be. 0345 60 60 973 is the number you need. It's 12:17.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 12:19. My apologies to George, who's absolutely livid. I'm sitting here waiting for Mystery Hour. I've got my days mixed up, and then you use a word I can't repeat on the radio, George. Hey, it's there on the old LBC player, isn't it? LBC app. Global player, LBC app. I can't say old, it's brand spanking new. But you can listen back to all the old Mystery Hour. You can listen to all my shows. How far back does it go, Keith? The archive. Not just Mystery Hour, the whole thing. When do we actually start having the whole show there? I know you don't listen back. Why would you? You get to sit here at the ringside seat the first time round. But how far back do the Mystery Hours go? Quite far back. About 10 years, is it? Could be. It's been, I mean, I don't know. Does it go back to the beginning? Do we go back to the very beginning? Anyway, there's loads for you to listen to, mate. So don't panic about missing yesterday's. You can listen to yesterday's as well. I like that. It's from Tony. Is there no drawbridge that we won't consider pulling up behind us? So maybe I'm sounding like a wombat. Do you know that wombats do cuboid poos? Did I ever tell you that? I started mentioning wombats on the programme because I'm living in a constant search for insults that aren't actually offensive. So I went with wombat, which worked for a while until everybody who loves wombats got upset with me. But I also got sent some wombat-related trivia, which is that they defecate in cuboids. They do square poo. No, not fascinated by that? I was. But, of course, this conversation is a little bit more nuanced than I realised. Listen to this from Kelly. I will never forget seeing a child I knew to have a difficult home life crying on the last day of term, asking the teaching assistant if she could still come in on Monday. For kids for whom school is a refuge, the long holiday must be hell. And this was quite powerful as well. I've lost it, from Tracy, who was a single mother. I forgot about single parents in my introduction. Please forgive me. It was a stupid thing to say about both parents are working. Everything's going to be 10 times harder if you're on your own when the summer holidays come around. So please grab your phone line while you can if you're in that category. 0345 6060 973. And Beth, who's in Austria, tells me that they get 9 weeks off. And as an adult, I still get your feelings at the beginning of the summer holidays. I get it every year. By the end of 9 weeks, I am looking forward to going back to work, completely refreshed and re-motivated. But on the subject of regression, that can even happen to some children after 2 weeks of holidays. Once they get out of the routine of learning, it can be quicker than you think. Danielle is in Manchester. Danielle, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
I had to call today. I'm on my lunch break, and I'm a lone parent, so This is something that I absolutely dread. Every year, as we reach up to it, I try and plan my annual leave to cover the other holidays as well, but also to give my daughter time off. I think for me, it's the cost. It's the cost, but it's the guilt. So the guilt for me is that I have to work. I have to continue to provide for my family, but my daughter will see some of the friends who she might have who can stay at home, and she has to essentially go to a place that she's not familiar with. And she will eventually make friends. But I see kids who really struggle with that as well. I'm quite fortunate that she's friendly. The other flip side of this is that I work in the housing sector, and similar to any sector that touches base with people, real people, and works towards improving their lives, when it comes to summer, we understand and know the challenges that, in particular, low-income families, complex families face during this time. And so we have to focus our attention on resources to try and support them through it. So it's a real antiquated way of looking at the school holidays. I loved my summer holidays, so I don't want that to be ripped away from the future generation. But the simple fact is that the society isn't set up to take that much time off school.
It's not anymore. It was when it was introduced, but it isn't anymore. I think that's a brilliant explanation. It's a bit of a Pandora's box, this then, isn't it? In that I can't remember anyone ever talking about it before from this angle but not. I mean, the cost angle is clear. I think there was some research around earlier about how much the holiday clubs are going to cost this summer. You're not going to get any change out of £1,000, which of course is beyond some people's. It's beyond possible for some people, and they'll have even more challenges to negotiate. But for loads of people, the summer holiday delivers the opposite feeling to the ones we got when we were 10. It's Absolutely. A feeling, you get it in the bottom of your tummy. You can hear it creeping up on you, can you?
Yeah, it started probably a couple of months before they started for me, and I'm trying to look and think, okay, what can I do? And you'll reach out to people, but you feel, again, like, are you as a single mum, you always feel that burden, you're burdening other people, so then you have to cross that barrier because you want your kids to be somewhere familiar. And then, there's 8 days of these summer holidays, 8 working days of these summer holidays that I've still not found childcare for.
So you've got that, and that's haunting you as well.
Yeah, it's really difficult, and I think I don't disagree that children need a break, and I don't disagree that teachers need a break, absolutely. And if they were more staggered across the year, and there was a sort of review of how much time children actually need to spend in school and the benefits of being in school, and teachers were rewarded fairly if that was looked at and changed, then I think it could actually significantly benefit. And it would also help with the whole school fines, with the time off, because if it was more balanced across the year, we wouldn't all have to face total huge costs or just not going away or paying a fine.
Yeah, so you find me a problem, and I will show you how it's worse for the longer the length of the holiday. It's hard to argue with that logic. Okay, so that's really annoying, and it's still annoying in a 4-week summer holiday. But it's not as annoying as it would be in a 6-week summer holiday.
Absolutely.
I like it. Hey, don't feel guilty, eh?
Oh, you can't help it.
I know you can't. I was raised a Catholic. I could say I'm not taking any lessons from anyone about guilt. I was taught by nuns and monks. But the silliness of it all. You're doing your best. You're doing your best. And she knows that you're doing your best. But you just want to wake up in the summer holidays and spend the day with her, and she wants to spend it with you. But I wish you wouldn't feel guilty, Danielle.
Thanks, James. Well, I mean, it's the burden of a mother is to feel guilt as well, so it's not just a Catholic trait.
I hear you. Elizabeth's in Nottingham. Elizabeth, what would you like to say?
Hello. I suppose I'm in the slightly maybe a more unpopular camp of I actually quite like the summer holidays with the little ones, and I do work in a school. I'm not a teacher, I should say that, but I do work in a school, and I think you can certainly see by the end of that summer term, the children are exhausted. They're very much ready for a break, and certainly in my little ones, I really see the difference when they've had a jolly good break from that education setting. And
but 4 weeks is still a jolly good break, isn't it?
It is a long time, but I suppose I'm probably maybe still in that era of I really like them to have a really nice long break. It's time. I appreciate not everybody can do it, but it's time to spend time with their friends, their family, and make some memories together, and then go back to school in a refreshed state of mind.
I don't think. Yes, all your arguments are brilliant for people lucky enough to be in the position you're in, which you completely acknowledged at the beginning of the call. But you are living in circumstances that were normal in the 1970s and are not normal now.
Of course, absolutely. But I think it's important also to say there are lots of ways out there to support with the costs of childcare and activities over the summer. For example, I've looked at a number of different activities with my children that are free. There's lots of local Lidos, for example, which we plan to go to.
Yeah, but you can go to those. Danielle's child can't because Danielle's at work.
Well, but there's also things like childcare sharing. So, for example, there's a number of instances where I'm going to look after friends' children when they're at work, and they'll do vice versa for me. I actually work in a different local authority area to my child's school, so I'm often at work when they're not. So those holidays don't always work out, and that's often how we manage it. Is a little bit of childcare sharing as well to support that. And
so you cut your cloth. Free. Yeah, no, these are all brilliant points. Is it Lido or Lido?
Oh, I'm not sure. I've always called it a Lido, but maybe that's the wrong,
what do you call it,
pronunciation.
Keith? Lido. I thought it was Lido. Lido. Let's call the whole thing off.
There's lots of things like out there that are free and can support with parents. There's lots of holiday club voucher offers out there as
yeah,
well.
I hear you. But of course, if it was in 4 weeks, that would all be true as well. And all of the problems that those things are designed to alleviate get worse the longer the holiday may be. But I am haunted by Tony's message about pulling up the drawbridge. So from a 10-year-old's point of view, this sounds like cruelty. I'll be on the phone to Childline. There's a bloke on the radio trying to shorten our summer holidays. I want him arrested immediately. Elizabeth, take care. Speaking of Lidos, or Lidos, I went swimming in the lake at Sion House last weekend. It's just an experiment with... it used to be a fishing lake. I don't know why it's not a fishing lake anymore, but I'd love that kind of thoughtfulness from... But it's not a public body, is it? It's a stately home owned by a duke. But the idea that you'd go swimming in a lake, it was so lovely. I put it on Blue Sky, and the amount of people who suggested I was going to get sick or get ill or that I'd be swimming through sewage. It's a lake. It's a blooming lake. It's full of fish. It wasn't the River Thames, although I swam in the River Thames during lockdown down in where did King John sign the Magna Carta, Keith? Runnymede, thank you. Down in Runnymede. I had a lovely time down in... I don't know why I mentioned that, but just the thought of outdoor swimming in this hot weather is absolutely irresistible. And that was a wonderful little local attraction. Brentford, I tell you, it's the Riviera of the West. It's coming up to 12:30. We are conversing about parents who want summer holidays cut to 4 weeks. I suppose Elizabeth is not one of them. If you are, just why? And we're just, I think, unlocking a sense of social change not having been kept up with by the rules. So as the summer holiday nears, do you actually feel your dread building because the logistical nightmare of keeping those plates spinning or keeping those children cared for is so great that you can't even remember how you got past it last time? Amelia Cox is here with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12 weeks in Ireland, can it? Ian says, when I was a kid, I used to be jealous of my Irish cousins and their 12-week summer holidays. However, by the time their own kids were at school, they'd be moaning about the length of the holidays. A couple of people suggesting we're approaching it from the wrong angle and that actually we should be talking about doing more to provide childcare during the summer holidays than shortening the summer holidays. Well, that ignores the regression argument which is a large part of this call, experts saying that children regress academically during the summer holiday and that therefore it should be cut. I don't know about that. I don't know how big the regression would be. You'd need to be a teacher. I mean, are you really sending kids home in July who they know all their times tables, and then they come back in September and they can't get past 7 sevens? Is that actually feasible? 49, Keith. Sally's in Bristol. Sally, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello,
Hi.
Sally.
I'm all for shortening the holidays. I think the summer holidays are absolutely ridiculous, and it's so hard. I'm a single parent, so I had to leave a job a couple of years ago because I just knew I would struggle with the summer holidays. Yeah, and I don't have any family support, really.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, obviously, but it is interesting to think that we could have been having a different phone-in about employers not being anything like sympathetic enough to parents, particularly lone parents, when the summer holidays come around.
Yeah, I literally have just handed my notice. I was working for a company who proffered flexibility, and my son had an accident on the way to school a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I went into the office, it's 8:30, literally just pulled up and asked my boss if I could work from home, because what I do, I can work from home.
Right.
And I got shouted at. And yeah, it was like really shouted at, not just a little.
Well, that's not allowed.
You know?
Yeah, it's a terrible business. So you thought,
so I had to leave that job because I just knew that with the school play, I had 2 transition days because he's going to senior school in September.
Right.
And something else, there was a leaving do for the head that I wanted to be present at. And I just knew that if I asked my boss for more time off because of my son, so I had to quit that job. That came with a company car. So now it's the summer holidays. I'm unemployed. I have no car, no family support. My son's dad doesn't have him at all, although I think this year he may do. It's just, I was saying to the researcher, it's like the energy that you have to have as well as a single parent. You cannot just pass anything to your other half. And I've done this since my son was 4 months old. And I'm just
out of interest, how old? I don't know what the rules are, but how old will he be when you're comfortable just leaving him to his own devices during the holidays?
So
because you may only have another couple of years to get through.
Yeah, he's mature enough as well. He's a great kid. I'm really fortunate.
Does he look forward to the summer holidays?
He hasn't really said.
No,
actually.
I'm just wondering because he'll pick up on your stress, and that's not. I know you do. We all do. That's not a criticism.
And I meditate.
Good.
No, I know.
But B, if he's not quite sure what he's going to be doing, he's sort of not going to be feeling that sense of utter liberation that we felt when we were young. Maybe.
Yeah, again, I'm very fortunate. I've got amazing friends, and one of my friends is actually taking my son away for a week.
Lovely.
In a couple of weeks. So we've got that.
He's got that to look forward to then.
Yep, and we're going camping. So that's like, there's only 4 weeks after that.
Well, there it is. And if it was only a 4-week holiday, there'd only be 2 weeks after that. So, I like this because what you're describing is not abnormal. Your arrangements are not, by any stretch of the imagination, abnormal. They might have been in the 1970s, but the system, whether it's your workplace or whether it's broader issues, has not recognised how much families have changed, how much things have, for better or for worse, things have changed. And yet this massive element of the year, the huge summer holiday, hasn't changed at all. And there will be there are, because they're ringing me, lots of parents who actually approach it with the precise opposite feeling to how they approached the summer holidays when they were 10. Thank you, Sally. 12:37 is the time. Alex is in Camden. Alex, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Thanks for having me. This is a great conversation.
Well, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because it's obviously one of those conversations that's been present in many people's lives, but we've never talked about before.
Absolutely. So I am the father of 3 brilliant kids who are too young to be sort of left to their own devices. But me and my wife both work full-time. We're both hospital doctors in the NHS.
Right.
And our children are almost the sort of victims of their own fortune and success in that, they've got really fulfilled lives, and we, during term time, there's lots of activities and lots of things to do. And the problem is my children don't know how to be bored. And I look back on my summer holidays with such fondness at, just as you said, being left to my own devices to, make my own fun and have all those things. And we feel the pressure so much to try and keep them off screens, keep them off mindless activities now, that you have that pressure of having to fill these holidays with things. And we try and use, grandparents for help and support. And actually what you find is the kids are just sat in front of the TV, which is, or, on an iPad or something, which we don't want. I want them to be able to go outside, be bored and explore. And it comes back to your first conversation of how the world's moved on and sort of the childhood that we had where we knew how to be bored and fill those 8 weeks with fun and excitement and wonder. Sort of
private school alert.
I know, sorry.
8 weeks. No, carry on. It's funny, the little giveaways. No, you can't apologise to me. I pointed it out first. 8 weeks is even longer than 6 weeks. That's maths, that is, Alex.
Yeah.
I love that idea because, it would be, you could play cricket with one mate. And one of you would be Ian Botham and the other one would be Jeff Boycott or something. And you could play 5-day test matches. You could just, imagination, playing tennis against the wall when you were Bjorn Borg. I don't want to sound like old Gititis, but I don't think our children have got that anymore.
No, they're not wired that way anymore. And
that's not, are they?
And it's a different type of stress to the other callers have had. And I appreciate we're in a really fortunate situation, but it's a very long time to try and keep the three of them.
Keep them both busy. How old were you? I mean, I'm just trying to remember because my mum worked, and I don't think I was actually that old when I'd just stay at home on my own. And my sister would be there as well, so she's even younger than me. I think we're more wary of doing that as parents these days as well. We're probably thinking, I can't leave them unsupervised at the age of 12 or 13, whereas our parents might have thought that they could.
Absolutely, and I'm constantly accused by my parents of over-parenting.
Oh, you really?
Yeah.
And they're right and wrong.
Exactly. But coming back to what you were saying before, it's just that we live in a different time now and we have to...
Yes, we do, and your parents don't, and that's why they're right and they're wrong. And I don't know, over-parenting or parenting. Things change, the world changes, it turns, and some things that were considered utterly unremarkable and perfectly normal 30 years ago are no longer, and yet the summer holiday has remained utterly unchanged throughout this period where everything around it has changed almost beyond recognition, and it's huge. And it's not. I mean, Alex and his wife both working as doctors, a comfortable existence, but still this thing on the horizon when you've got to undertake a logistical exercise up there with goodness knows what is going to be daunting. Daunting is the thing. We even used to have a television program dedicated to it. Chris has just reminded me. Why don't you go and do something less boring instead? All those things. I mean, watching telly when you only had two... I'm turning into a Facebook post. Stop it. Sinead's in Oxford. Sinead, what would you like to say?
I think I just wanted to raise a point on... I think the 6 weeks is probably enough. I know my two, they are exhausted. The weather gets warmer and school days just get a lot harder, especially sort of with... the heat at the moment.
Yeah.
But myself and my husband, we both work full time. I'm lucky enough that he finishes at 3 o'clock.
Right.
But to navigate sort of time off with the kids, childcare, and then the cost of the childcare provisions, it's just not feasible.
What is it? Talk me through the numbers if you want to. You don't have to, but I think people listening won't know.
I'm booked my children in for 3 days of a holiday club.
Yeah.
It's £70 each. That's just 3 days out of the school holidays. I can't afford to do that any more than what I've done.
So £70 each for the whole 3 days, or £70 each per day?
For the whole 3 days.
Yeah, it can't be per day. Well, that was a stupid question. I do apologise. I just couldn't divide 70 by 3.
£40. No. And I just think sort of the imbalance between that, for working parents to get the support for the childcare.
Yeah.
And then there's sort of other parents that are eligible for free childcare, free clubs, vouchers, that might not necessarily need. The children might need it, but sort of in terms of
it's a hodgepodge. It's a hodgepodge, and it's a lottery, and the system needs to change.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had to pay for childcare for both of us to go to nursery in order for us to go back to work. If I didn't go back to work, we would have had the funding provided. So
it's funny, isn't it? All these thresholds.
How are we to navigate?
Well, what you then have is you have with nursery in particular. You're some people are even running at a loss, just waiting until they get into free schooling, until they get into primary school, and then your financial situation improves enormously. But you can't give up your job, because then you might not get it back when the kids start school. You can't slide back
any
in.
Type of career progression.
Precisely.
And then I was speaking to the lady on the phone before, just in terms of sort of the workforce and the impact it has sort of in my job sector. We work with vulnerable people, so there's a lot of parents and families that work within
and so you want
where
that
I
longevity
do. So
and consistency.
And we're seeing less people throughout sort of July and August, where there's less people in work to be able to see them, and they're vulnerable people who aren't getting access to services.
Crikey, doing such important work, and from everybody's point of view, the necessity, if not the importance, if not the necessity of having contact with the same people is immeasurable. I didn't know this was going to go the way that it's gone. I sort of thought there'd be something here, but I didn't think I'd come away thinking, well, it's blooming obvious. It's absolutely ridiculous, the system as it stands, but nobody ever says so, because it's always been like that. How many things, what did we call it? We had a name for it. It's an absolutely ridiculous way to do things, but we never pointed out or even perhaps noticed, because things have always been like that. You're just quietly getting on with the ridiculousness if you're a family preparing for the summer holidays, knowing that it's going to be a logistical nightmare. I remember Gary's been in touch, and he remembers callers. He's got a memory like a Rolodex. I don't know how long ago this was, but we were talking about childcare, not in the holidays even. It was 2 police officers. This is such a haunting call. A husband and wife police officer who would meet in lay-bys between shifts to hand the baby over in the car seat, because it was so tightly scheduled and so expensive, childcare, that I always remember that, and so does Gary. 12:45 is the time. Let's take a quick hit and then I'll come back. I've got a cracking text to read you, by the way. I'll read you the first line of it. I run a tiny little coffee shop in Cornwall. Every year I dread the onslaught of summer holidays. Why? Surely it's great for business. Find out after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:48. I run a tiny little coffee shop in Cornwall. I'm reading this, obviously. I present a radio show in London. Every day I dread the onslaught of summer holidays. Huge crowds of tired, stressed families who aren't used to being together all day, every day, desperately trying to have a good time under the time pressure of the 6 to 8 weeks of summer. You write beautifully, Liz, actually. I feel sad for them when I hear, we only get one summer holiday a year, so please stop your whinging and have a nice time and stop hitting your sister. Oh, I've been transported back to Morricambe in 1978. Splitting the summer holidays up into more manageable bites would be a great idea for everyone. Sustaining the huge increase in customers for 8 weeks and being responsible for their nice time is a privilege, and I love doing it. But breaking it up a bit would make it nicer and easier for everyone. What a lovely, measured and insightful contribution. Jimmy wants to know whether you do baby chinos. That must have made life a lot harder for people operating coffee shops. Baby chinos, they're often free as well. I've got a lovely full disclosure this week. It's ended up being surprisingly topical, because it's with Grace Dent, the food critic, who also, of course, stepped in to present the last series of Celebrity MasterChef, and is hot favourite to be one of the presenters of the new MasterChef. It's a cracking read. It's a cracking listen. You can read it if you want. You'd have to just put it through transcription software, and I will play you a little clip of that shortly. Last week, because we were talking to Francesca Albanese from the United Nations, it's entirely my fault. I completely forgot to play a clip of Full Disclosure last week, but that was another cracker as well, with Graham Fellows, who you will know whether you recognise the name or not, and you probably recognise the name, but Graham Fellows is John Shuttleworth, but also Jilted John of Gordon is a Moron fame, And I don't know that I've ever interviewed anybody whose sort of iconic status is so multifaceted. And he's also the star of a rather brilliant new film that I told you about a couple of weeks ago, because one of my old producers actually wrote it. So that's one to listen to. You should definitely listen to the Graham Fellows one, and I'll play you a little clip of the Grace Dent one shortly, because that was a lovely sit-down interview. She hardly ever does interviews as well, which was quite gratifying. Chris is in Taunton to take us back to the school holidays. Chris, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello.
So basically, I am a service engineer. Well, I was a service engineer for a multinational organisation, and my wife was training to be a nurse, and so we had our first child, who was Lucy, and so when she was 10, we had our second child. The timings were such because we were planning to emigrate to New Zealand, but we decided not to go so the grandparents could see their grandchildren grow up.
Yeah.
Which they haven't, but that's a subject for another call-in. So basically, the problems that we had were
summer holidays.
It was always an absolute disaster for us because with my wife being at university at the time, I mean, it was she did her university in Plymouth. So she was on a bursary. Luckily, she was one of the last to get the bursary. So we were able to have her in bursary during the time that she was at university, which was great. But for the holidays, obviously, there was nothing. So it was always a case of extremely expensive childcare, and also, I mean, because during the holidays she wouldn't often get the holiday; she would be working to subsidise, obviously, our income or my income, because we needed to be a two-income family because mortgages and bills and whatnot.
And then so you could just about get, doing okay during normal service during term time, but then the summer holiday comes along like a mugger and just smacks you around the back of the head.
Exactly that, and we used to use up all our good faith with friends, purely so we could go to work. Absolutely nothing to do with
not exactly living it up or having a laugh, but just literally keeping the ship afloat. There's so many people in your position. Why do you think it's not talked about more?
Well, it is talked about in the circles that I move in. It's horrendous, but the trouble is there's very few people with influence enough to do anything about it. I mean, we have elections to hopefully bring in a government that can make things better for working people, but unfortunately it doesn't ever seem to be the case. And if I could just go on to say
actually on that front, I think they are doing after school clubs. They've certainly done free school dinners, the current lot, which isn't going to help with childcare, but helps with some other costs and problems. Go on. What was the other thing you wanted to say?
So the issue is, James, that obviously my wife often, I mean, when she wasn't working nights as a nurse, I mean, now she runs the hospital, so it's not an issue anymore. But when she was working nights, or she had to be at work at 7 a.m., there is no club and there is no childcare that you can drop your child off at such a time in the morning, and indeed keep your child until the hours that you require them to be there. Because my job led me to be away elsewhere in the UK and also into Europe.
So an unsupported parent in that context is some careers and some jobs are actually closed down to them. They literally wouldn't be able to do them in some circumstances. And again, that's something that's often missing from these conversations. Not for that. I've got to crack on, Chris. Thank you. Because I've got to squeeze in this clip of Grace Dent. But we should have done another one, shouldn't we? I don't know how we're going to do it because we're only a UK radio station. I know I've got a lot of listeners overseas, but I haven't got that guarantee of doing comparisons with what do they do in other countries. Some Scandinavian countries seem to get months off in the summer, and they go okay. But I bet you that the stuff Chris talked about is completely different in places like Denmark and Finland and Sweden. You might well get really, really long holidays, but I bet the employer's responsibility to a parent is profoundly different. It's coming up to 12:55. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we have a sneak preview of this week's Full Disclosure with the inimitable broadcaster and writer Grace Dent. You probably know her from, well, a whole bunch of reasons why you'll know her, but you'll know her even better after this.
The food world is very middle class, going into upper class. It is funny to talk about this because I don't ever want it represented as I starved and just ate these awful things. It's more I want to tell the truth that in the 70s, the basket that my mother took to, the tiny supermarket near my house. This is the days before the big Asda's and the big Morrisons arrived on the outskirts of the city. That was these were exciting times. You know, if you got some butterscotch Angel Delight in a sachet, delicious. Tins of ambrosia rice pudding, all of these things.
I had a cherry brandy lolly the other day. Do you remember them?
Yes.
And it tasted like 1970. It tasted like the summer of '76. When I'm too young to remember the summer of '76. But my mate is an ice cream man, and he said you've got to have one of these. And he's Italian, so he normally brings me back like some olive oil from Italy. Or last time I saw him, he had a big bulb of garlic that he'd grown in his garden. So I was wondering what exotic treat has he got for me there? And it was a cherry bread. You know, the ones that taste almost of almonds.
Yes.
Absolutely delicious.
Absolutely
so
delicious.
when did the and part of the reason why it's dominated by middle and upper class people is because of the financial exclusion from this world, the simple cost of things.
I think it's that, and I also think that for a long time there was a very set way of looking at who was valid to talk about food. And when the chefs and the food experts often had a very set way of saying it, they went, I am an expert on food because I know, they would say, kind of reading between the lines, I know all about French gastronomy.
Yes.
Because, and I know all about Italian food, because when I was a child, roughly speaking, they would all say, my family went on these fabulous all summer long holidays, and from that I learned to cook at the knee of the local woman that came in to cook, the nonna. And you know, that's kind of an amalgamation of 50 chef and food people's stories, and that is a lovely story, and we're still in love with that story to today. That somebody will say, oh, the first time I tasted this beautiful seafood was when my friend's father used to dive for them and bring them from the bottom of the ocean. And then when somebody like me would come along and go, look, I lived on toast and toast toppers until I was 17. But for me, this cornucopia of everything that I've learned ever since, I really want to talk about it. But yeah, I think that when I came along into the world, it was not a shock, but to have the confidence to do it, I'm proud of myself.
And rightly so. Grace Dent, my guest on this week's Full Disclosure, but also Graham Fellows, my guest on last week's Full Disclosure, who I didn't have time. Well, I say I didn't have time. I had plenty of time. I just mismanaged my time because we were playing out that lengthy interview, and I should have played out a little clip of Graham Fellows before we played out the lengthy interview, but I didn't. Isn't it fascinating to see behind the scenes of how this show works and operates? If something goes wrong, it is almost always my fault. I don't know if you've ever picked up on that over the years, but if something goes wrong, it's almost always down to one of two things. I've either completely forgotten about something that I was supposed to do, and I could say I haven't been reminded, but apparently that's not relevant, or I've just conducted an exercise in complete mismanagement. So not actually forgotten, but just miscalculated. So now you know. That's it from me for another week. My apologies to everybody waiting to talk about the unconscionable length of the school summer holidays, but I actually think that is probably going to become more of an issue with every passing year. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player and the LBC app, where you can stay up to date on the top stories and opinions and put your news categories in the order you want. You can pause, rewind live radio. You can listen to a range of podcasts. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Ben Kentish will be in for Tom Swarbrick at 4. But now on LBC, it's time for Sheila Fogarty.
No one's ever made a sillier mistake on LBC than me.
Which one was that?
Good afternoon, welcome to Superdrug. Remember that one?
Yes, that was vintage.
I can't believe it. It was like somebody just removed my brain for a millisecond, then popped it back in. Anyway, yeah.
James O'Brien on LBC.